Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Wednesday. Hope everybody's having a good week so far. One day closer to Notre Dame kicking off against Wisconsin up at Lambeau Field. And we have another fun and loaded show coming your way today. Brian's getting some stuff done, taken care of today. So today you get me and Sean Davis. And Sean, it's been a minute since we've done a show together, man.
It has, man. We can't let it go this long. We
I
can't do
know.
this. Nah, we can't do this.
No, I'm glad to be on the show today with you, man. It's been too long, and we have a really fun topic coming your way. Look, we're kind of now, we mentioned it yesterday, we're kind of bridging over into our preseason content plan more so than just the offseason. And it's a really fun place to be when you factor, Sean, it's been over 260 days since we've seen Notre Dame play football. That is, you want to talk about us not doing a show together for too long. It has been way too long since we've seen Notre Dame on our TV screens or in person. And, we're gearing up and talking about, okay, what does Notre Dame need to do to win a championship this year? That's been the driver of a lot of our conversations. Thank goodness Karen was in the chat because I've been searching for how many days. It's been 18 days until Notre Dame plays Wisconsin. Just a little bit over 2 weeks, man. We need it.
Yeah.
We need it like we need oxygen to breathe. But, the focus has been, what does Notre Dame need to do to win a title? And it's not what does Notre Dame have to do to just make the playoffs? What do they have to do to just beat Miami on November 7th or just beat BYU? We're looking at everything all encompassing. And over the course of the offseason, we've been pretty consistent in talking about, the four really main position groups that are going to be highlighted for Notre Dame to win a title. That's quarterback, offensive line, defensive line, then obviously the secondary. We're not going to talk too much about the secondary today because, Sean, let's be honest, there's a lot. Notre Dame's secondary has been good enough to win a title the last couple seasons. I think they were good enough in 23. I think they were good enough in 24. And once they found their footing in the new defensive system last year, I think they were good enough in 25 to win a national championship. But today we're going to focus on the three other position groups. Part one, we're talking about C.J. Carr. He's going to be a major driver of success this year and what Notre Dame has to do to win a title. Part two, we're going to be talking about the offensive line. Part three, we're going to be talking about the defensive line. Marcus Freeman wants to be a line-driven program. And now the outlook for both of these two position groups are the highest that it's been when you factor in the talent, the experience, the depth on both sides of the ball. It's the highest outlook that these two position groups has had since Marcus Freeman took over back at, end of 2021 going into 22. And we're going to wrap up today's show today, folks, with a daily mailbag geared towards the topics that we're talking about today. So throughout the show, if you get a question, put MB for mailbag or a mailbox emoji. It lets us know to set that question aside. Super chats get bumped up to the top. You guys know how this is done. But Sean, before we get to the mailbag, before we get to the offensive and defensive line, let's have a conversation around C.J. Carr, a player from Notre Dame who is garnering a lot of attention this offseason, rightfully so. I know you guys have talked about it a lot on Lucky Lefty. We've talked about it a lot on the Big Afternoon Show. The guys on IB Nation Sports Beat have talked about it a lot. This is going to be a big year for C.J. Carr, man, and it's not very often we as Notre Dame fans get to sit back and say, hey, Notre Dame has a guy under center that's returning that is highly sought after in college football. Typically, it's we enter a season and it's Notre Dame has a pretty good quarterback, but there's a gap between the Trevor Lawrences of the world, the Julian Sains of the world, the Joe Burrows of the world, the Arch Mannings of the world, and now I think that Notre Dame has one of those guys. But, Sean, I don't think there's any way around it. This is going to be a big year for C.J.
Yeah. Odds-on favorite to win the Heisman over FanDuel. So, like you said, the expectations are there, and the expectations were really set even last year before he started. I think just whoever was going to win that battle was going to step in to expectations because of where the team was.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Now, we can sit here and argue whether or not CJ's would have been a little bit higher than Kenny's for different reasons. But because they were the start, they had won that quarterback battle. Whoever won that quarterback battle against what we could call two pretty good guys at the position, whoever came out of that was going to be the starting quarterback for the University of Notre Dame, which already by position, that's a big spotlight. So expectations already come with that position, but I'm very interested in what we saw. I don't feel like, and I told you this, I think he was a star, but I think he was a star in hiding. He was very much a co-star last year. And of course, we know the stars of the show last year because they were selected in the first round of the NFL draft, right? we know who the stars of the
Yeah.
North offense were last year. No need to beat a dead horse. But this year now, I'm so intrigued by how he embraces being the leader, having the reins or the steering wheel to this sports car, this Ferrari, if you will, in his hands. Like, how is he going to handle? How is he going to be able to shift? Because when you get a sports car, Trev, depending upon where you are, now you check this out. If you're in Miami on the streets, you coast. You got the top down. You want to drive. If you're by the beach, you don't want to be driving 100 miles per hour by the beach.
Sure.
You want to coast. You want to let everybody see you. You want to see everybody. You want to look at the scenery. Now, if you get on the highway and the expressway, then you want to hit it a little bit. And so I think the maturity for CJ is being able to navigate, when do I need to take over? Okay, this is the moment. These are the moments I need to take over. These are the moments that I need to, you know what, just distribute and let everybody else help me do my job. And that for me is what I'm going to be watching. Like his maturity of knowing, when do I take over? When do I hit the gas? And when do I just coast and allow the talent that surrounds me to go ahead and make me look even better than I already am?
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point, man. I mean, CJ is going to have all the tools at his disposal this year, right? I mean, I think of the analogy of like a chef. You obviously want the chef of your kitchen to have all the ingredients you need to put things together. But in previous years at Notre Dame, we've seen players come in that might not have all the seasonings in the cabinet. They might not have all the ingredients in the fridge. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
the analogies go on and on. But that's kind of brings us to the first point of what CJ Carr has to do to play at an elite level this year and do his part to help bring Notre Dame a national title. Folks, window in, this is kind of how we're breaking this conversation down. Looking at quarterback, offensive line, and defensive line, this conversation is geared towards what do each of these, in the case of CJ Carr, what is this player? Or for the offensive and defensive line, what do these position groups have to do to play elite level football? To help Notre Dame and play their major role in Notre Dame bringing home the 12th national title to its program. And we've broken it down into two different sections. We're breaking it down into big picture, which is what Sean's getting into, talking about, hey, can you be the primary driver of success? Then later on in the segment, we're going to talk about like the real world, like what are the on-field applications that CJ has to do, and what do these position groups have to do? Because it doesn't take a rocket scientist to sit here and be like, CJ's got to be really good this year, guys. Thanks for coming to the Irish Breakdown podcast. Brian and I will be back tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to talk big picture, and then we're going to talk on-field application. And Sean, you hit the nail on the head. Big picture, CJ is stepping into a year where he has to become the primary driver of success. And that's in large part due to Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price going in the first round. On top of that, you lose three of your four top pass catchers. You know, on offense last year, Notre Dame had 70 total touchdowns. Notre Dame scored 70 total touchdowns in the 2025 season. 45 of those are now in the NFL between Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, Malachi Fields, Eli Raridan, and Will Pauling. And so now who is going to be the player that gets turned to? And that's CJ Carr. You're getting handed the keys to a sports car. Okay, can you be the primary driver of success? And that's something that Notre Dame has had at quarterback. They haven't had at quarterback in quite some time to this degree. They've had quarterbacks come through that have been capable of being the drivers of success. But as I brought up in the show yesterday, sometimes it doesn't match up with the rest of the supporting cast. You know, I think in 05 and 06, they had a championship caliber quarterback. I would argue that in 2009 and Jimmy Clausen, they had a championship caliber quarterback. We can get into the leadership stuff and the locker room stuff and how he arrived on campus in the fur coat and the limo, and you know what I mean? But his play on the field was that of a championship caliber quarterback. You take Jimmy Clausen away from that team, they're not going 6-6 in 2009. I can guarantee you that. And then there's been other years where the supporting cast is where it needs to be, but the quarterback isn't necessarily where it needs to be. This year, all signs are pointing to, okay, you have the quarterback, you have the other pieces, but can that quarterback be the primary driver of success? And that's really where we start this conversation. Like you brought up, Sean, it's now up to CJ.
It's up to CJ, but CJ, for me, has always been an elite distributor, right? Um, I think there are some benchmarks that he has to hit one thing he needs to do is to break this trend of transfer quarterbacks winning national championships. That's number one. We need CJ to break this
Yeah,
trend of
very true.
transfer quarterbacks winning national championships and go ahead and reestablish the natural order of guys being developed and waiting their turn and ultimately taking the reins and leading their team to a national championship. I think that's the first thing he's going to break. But I do think that he is going to have to temper wanting to lead and understanding that the team around him, and I hope the team around him, I believe, is better than the team that was around him last year in totality.
From top to bottom.
Right? Yes. Right. So you can say the offense might be more explosive in the passing game because of CJ and because of the added wide receivers. There's some influx of talent coming in the tight end room and Ian Premer. You can't sit back and say Notre Dame hasn't developed productive running backs. There's a history of that. So even though maybe we won't have the same explosiveness as the two backs last year, the production is going to be similar in totality from a running back room because that's what Notre Dame does traditionally. And when you surround yourself with that, I think if he really comes to understand and see this in fall camp, he could be able to flow and not feel like, man, I have to go out and constantly put up points because I understand this defense is going to put me on short fields. This defense is going to create turnovers. This defense is going to score points. So even though it might seem like, man, there's a shift to where there is a lot of pressure where I have to be the leader in this, I'm really just leading a bigger and better machine in this team, which in essence to put him at ease, right? Because I love the battles. I think the iron sharpened iron that we're seeing and that you guys have been able to see in practice, that's the one thing that's going to allow him to really take a step forward and be ready for those big picture moments that we talked about. It's like I really believe it's starting right now, and I really believe he's getting an accurate picture of what truly is going to be needed from him, whether it's breaking the scoring record. Okay, do they need to break the scoring record again? Do they need to break his scoring record again? How many touchdowns does he really need? Does he need to throw as many touchdowns as Fernando Mendoza threw? Does he need to account for as many touchdowns as Fernando Mendoza did? It's like he has to find his niche. Don't try to think about the Heisman and how many stats. What is it going to take for me to win the Heisman? Go undefeated. If you go undefeated as a quarterback in Notre Dame, I don't care what your stats are. You're going to be in New York. So the bigger issue is not about what he produces. The bigger issue is about how this team progresses throughout the year and how he chooses to lead them. Because Trev, I'm going to be honest. I don't look for this big statistical explosion coming from CJ. Because I just truly believe the schedule early on is not, like you said, there are games he might not even be in the game come mid-third quarter.
Sure.
Right? There's games last year, you said he hadn't even touched the ball. They were up 3 touchdowns. Like, and with the schedule and with how much better the team is, I think he is in a perfect position to kind of pace himself. I do want him to come out hot. I will say that because I think that's another trend under Marcus Freeman that I think we would like to see them turn around. Start off fast against Wisconsin and then not have a letdown. Continue to build, continue to grow, find some level footing. And then once they know the big games. You play football, Trev. People tell, we hear the coach speak, it's week to week. Every opponent is dangerous. Man, let me tell you something. Those players know the two teams they want to play. Unfortunately, they won't get an opportunity to play Texas A&M unless it's in the playoffs. But you can't tell me they don't have November 7th circle. You can stop that. If we're having an honest conversation, we can stop that. Yes, Wisconsin is the team before them. But you better believe there's some conversations going on when they're playing PlayStation, doing TikToks or whatever they do outside the. There's some conversations going on, Trev, about the Hurricanes coming down the South Bend, and that's the nature of competition.
Yeah.
That's the nature of competition. But big picture, I think his leadership, um, and just being able to seize the moments and knowing when to press the gas and when to let the team around him go ahead and do what they do, I think it's going to help him not put too much pressure on himself.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there's no need for him to press this season because
Yeah.
of the players that you have around you. I agree wholeheartedly. But you brought up starting fast. And that kind of goes back to the point that we were talking about. It's like, okay, you have to now be the primary driver of success. No longer
Yeah.
is it redshirt freshman CJ Carr of like, all right, we got to start fast, guys. Jay Love, what are you about to go do? Jadarian Price, what are you about to go do? Hey, Malachi, be ready. It's players are looking at you in the huddle.
Yeah.
Players are looking at 13 in the huddle. It's like, all right, Q, we got to start fast. And so, what does that start to look like for him? I also agree with everything that you said about the schedule and what that's going to look like. You have to be able to be the leader of the offense, but mostly we can be real about something. It's about the big moments of the season. It's on October 17th, it's on November
Mm-hmm.
7th, and it's on November 21st when the SMU comes to town for senior day, and then obviously carried over into the postseason.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take too much away from if CJ Carr doesn't throw for 350 yards against Rice. I don't know if he'll have the opportunity to do that unless he does that by halftime. I'm with you there completely. But can you be that guy? Can you be that dependable leader on the road, potentially in prime time against BYU out in Provo? Can you be that guy midway through the third quarter at home at night against Miami? Can you be that guy at home at night against SMU on senior day? And then obviously once the postseason rolls around, you got to be that guy every game, every time you step on the field. And so I think that's important. You know, I go back through and I watched like the replay of the 2006 UCLA game kind of religiously because that's the first game that I ever went to. And when I get my feels in the offseason, I'm like, man, I'm missing football. I got to turn on something. I'll watch that game. Darius Walker on the final drive of the game said something in like, you know, how they do the weekly interviews with some of the players, like the broadcasting team will. Darius Walker said something to Pat Hayden, the color commentator, and you know, they asked him, this was after the miraculous comeback against Michigan State earlier that year. And they asked Darius Walker, hey, when you get into these situations, how are you guys so cool and calm? And Darius Walker's like, because we have 10. We have Brady Quinn in the huddle with us. You know, you look in his eyes and you know everything's going to be okay. Can CJ Carr give you that blanket of security this season when Miami rolls to town, when the postseason rolls around, when you're on the road against Provo? And to your point, at night, Lambeau Field, NFL Stadium, if the offense is starting a little sluggish, are they going to be able to look at CJ and be like, hey, man, go make a play? And that's what I think is going to be interesting about this year, too.
And you know what? It's cumulative, right? Because you're talking about it from the Notre Dame side. Can he have that Vince Young effect? Can he
Mm-hmm.
have that Fernando Mendoza effect? Well, Sean, what are you talking about? Hey, they played the players in the huddle feel like we got 15, we got 10. But also the other team is like, oh man, like you can't tell me USC wasn't saying if Vince gets the ball back, we're in trouble in that national championship game. Like they knew it. The coaching
Mm.
staff knew it. They knew it. And that's the feeling you have to have. The same thing, Cam Newton, you know, when he was at Auburn, like he's going to come up in a big moment, right? And CJ's going to have an opportunity. And you said we talked about this before. You know, if you really dig in, you'll see that he had those moments that were probably stolen from him because the defense couldn't get the job done or some other areas of the team. Like he showed that he can have a moment down against Miami late in the third
Yeah.
and the fourth quarter, right? He showed leading them to that touchdown to take the lead against Texas A&M. But here comes Tyler Buckner and the defense, right? So now that's now pushed to the background. So he's shown even early on, I can do this. I'm not afraid of the moments. So you feel confident knowing that, you know, as far as being able to handle the moment, that won't be a problem because we've seen evidence of that. But it goes back to my point. Now he's going to have the support that those performances won't get pushed to the back and ignored because we're so angry and bitter about who did this, who failed in this area. Now it's going to manifest itself into wins and him coming to the forefront and really receiving the credit for what truly early in the season as a first time starter, it was really fascinating to watch him in those moments be successful. So yeah, I'm right there with you, Trev. If he could create that aura, not just for his players, but having the other team and coaching staff saying, man, if he gets the ball back, we already know it's a problem. So now you start to affect how they go about calling plays and their strategy, trying to make sure that they keep the ball away from you. So how does that impact and help your defense in a certain way? It's going to be and it's going to be very interesting to see, you know, that aura that he builds and how it can impact.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we've seen teams that Notre Dame has gone against before have that effect at quarterback. I mean, look, I use this reference all the time.
Mm-hmm.
In the 2018 college football playoffs, one of the quarterbacks did not look like the other, if we're being real about it. In the 2018 playoffs, you had Kyler Murray, Trevor Lawrence, who else was in that? Tua, and Ian Book.
Yeah.
There were three teams that I can confidently say in that playoffs are like, hey, we're cool. We have insert one of the three names at quarterback that we just got done talking about. Whereas at Notre Dame, it had to be more of a collective effort. Whereas the 2024 playoffs, there was no disparaging gap at quarterback with Riley Leonard and Notre Dame. It wasn't,
Yeah.
oh, hey, Ohio State has Will Howard and Tennessee has Nico Iamaleava and, Clemson has Cade Klubnik and Georgia now has Gunnar Stockton, but I guess Notre Dame just has Riley Leonard. There was no feeling of that in the playoffs. So to your point, Sean, we've seen that with CJ Carr. And we've also seen that at the Notre Dame or at the quarterback position at Notre Dame. Now those two things just have to come together. To your point, we saw it last year with CJ in moments. But now it's kind of like going from, and it's different state to state, but it's like when you have your learner's permit and like you are
Mm-hmm.
behind the wheel of the car, but somebody's with you
Yeah.
versus when you just get your driver's license. And it's like,
Right.
okay, now it is just you driving this car. I'm not here with
Mm-hmm.
you to help you when to turn, remind you of your turn signal, know when to brake in enough time. And that's kind of what CJ Carr's walking into. The learner permit's gone, being Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price and Malachi Fields and all them. So I'm with you completely. This is going to be a big year for him. And look, you're listening to two guys that could talk for the next 3 hours about like all the pressure that's going to be on him and what we want to see. But there's also a real world, like on the field application that we need to see from CJ Carr. We get a lot of questions of, hey, Trev, hey, Brian, hey, Sean, hey, Vince. We talk a lot about CJ Carr has to elevate his game. What are those areas? And it's easy for us. Well, he has to be the leader. It's like, okay, but what does that look like? He has to be the driver of success. What does that look like? There are areas of his game that do have to improve. He's garnering a lot of attention. He's, on several All-American lists. I think the Davey O'Brien Award, Watch List Award came out. It would not shock me in the slightest if he was on that award watch list. He was on the Maxwell Award watch list. He's a Heisman favorite. But there are some areas of his game that have to continue improving. And one of those, actually, shockingly enough, Sean, it's his deep ball accuracy, because we talk a lot about CJ Carr and what he has to do and the skill set he brings to the table. I do want to be pretty specific with this, though. It's his deep ball accuracy outside of the hashes. Because over the middle of the field, when he took deep shots down the field over the middle of the field, he was exceptionally accurate. Yeah, this is in kind of a little sneak preview to some of the things that are on the IB preview magazine on boards at irishbreakdown.com. Brian went through and broke down what CJ Carr's accuracy numbers were on deep balls inside the hash and on outside throws. And just for reference, on deep passes over the middle of the field, Carr went 20 of 33 on posts, seams, and corners. 60.6% completion rate down the field. Deep at like 20 yards or longer down the field on corners, posts. So really great. The one that shocked us, though, when Brian put this information together was CJ Carr only went 8 of 29 on deep passes outside of the hashes.
Mm-hmm.
That is a key area that he has to get better in. And we're talking go routes and especially the slot fade. And with Jaden Greathouse hopefully being back in this offense this year consistently, hopefully that concept comes back in totality. But Sean, deep passes on the outside of the hashes is an area that CJ Carr has to improve on.
It was so funny because not being able to really watch a lot of Indiana football games. I remember we would go throughout the season and Malik would just be really disparaging about Fernando Mendoza in the sense of he's not really doing anything. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, dude, the moment at Penn State, like the comeback against Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. And he's like, Sean, you know what makes him so good? He's really good at what he's really good at.
Sure.
And he's absolutely incredible at the back shoulder fade. He was like, he kept saying that. And he was like, every big moment they have, you already know they're going to the back shoulder fade. And he's so good at it that it's nothing you can do to stop it. And so we talk about these moments that we're waiting to see if CJ Carr can step to the forefront and be successful in. What is going to be that attribute or that throw in those moments that even when the defense knows it's coming, there's nothing you can do about it? Is it going to be that back shoulder to Jaden Greathouse? Is it going to be a seam route to Mylan Graham or an over route to Mylan Graham? Is it going to be some type of route to Ian Premer? There has to be something in moments. It happens all the time, right? With Stetson Bennett, in clutch situations, you knew he was going to 19.
Yeah.
It didn't matter if they had 2 or 3 people on him. 19 was getting the ball, and they were going to win the game if they were successful. That's what I'm excited to see. Who is that guy? Whether it's a tight end or wide receiver that's going to be on the receiving end, and then what pass is it going to be that we're going to see consistently in those moments. So I think it goes right along with what you said. I wasn't shocked because it's something we actually talked about, post game shows and in between
It's a good
shows
point.
leading up the game. We talked about that. We talked about him working over the middle of the field. I think that was really the thing we really talked about the most. Wanted to see him work more over the middle of the field. But the missed opportunities, like they missed the opportunity where they had to kick a field goal. He had Malachi Fields against Texas A&M on a fade route. It was there. He threw the ball totally out of the end zone. Didn't even give Malachi Fields an opportunity. So it's just moments like that where you have to give your guys first an opportunity to at least make a play. And then you have to become, like you said, more efficient in those particular areas. And if he does that, he's going to be exactly who we think he is, you know. And the deep ball, we saw him miss, certain opportunities on the deep ball. Now we remember that play action touchdown of Malachi Fields
Mm,
right out the box, right? Beautiful. Remember, him giving a sign to Jordan Faison on the stop and go against Purdue. Beautiful. But there are other moments where it's like the ball hung up in the air a little bit too long. Oh, he overthrew that one. Or it was supposed to be back shoulder, ended up being front shoulder. So from all the buzz in practice, the man in passing academy, all of the things we've heard, he has been head and shoulders above everybody else. And if
for
that's the
sure.
case, I'm excited, Trev. I'm really excited. This is the best quarterback I've seen in Notre Dame in my time. I
Mm,
haven't seen anything like CJ Carr at quarterback. All respect to my co-host. All respect to my co-host. All respect to Everett Golson, right? We haven't seen anyone elongated success, right? Because Ed was interrupted by his suspension, Malik was interrupted by his injury, and then Deshaun regressed. So I think we're about to watch some. Look, Brady Quinn, of course. Brady Quinn is, we know who he is to Notre Dame fans. But I think at this point, after his first year, I would put CJ Carr ahead of where Brady was. I would,
especially depending
personally.
on what he gets accomplished in the postseason.
Absolutely. And so I think we're just watching a special guy that's really going to be the catapult for that position at Notre Dame. I really believe that. I think we're going to look back in 5 years and be talking about a quarterback possibly being better than CJ Carr at Notre Dame. Think about that, Trev. We actually have our Trevor Lawrence to Deshaun Watson
Mm,
possibly coming.
mm.
It could be, but that's really, I think his efficiency of certain numbers, I'm looking forward to. Right, I'm looking forward to his pass chunk percentage. which is completions of 15 plus yards, is 22.6, which you compare him, he didn't have as many attempts as some of the other quarterbacks, and he's almost right there at a quarter of his passes being 15 plus yards. That's pretty good. That's pretty darn good for a redshirt freshman, first time starter. He was aided, of course, by play action, the run game. But I think, look, the run game isn't about to disappear. The offensive line should be better than last year's offensive line. So the run game should still be something that draws the attention of defensive coordinators and defenders. So the chunk play opportunities, even with the elevated talent in the wide receiver room, could be better. Like, let's say he gets up to 25, 26% on chunk play percentage. The thing that I love is sack rate percentage. Dude, like top 5 in the country, which means and goes along with what Jalen Sneed and a lot of defenders have been saying. Like, he sees everything. He's going to make sure that Notre Dame is not in negative plays. He's going to make sure that they check to the right plays. He's going to see the blitzes coming. He's going to hit the hot receivers. He's going to know immediately where to go with the football. That's so valuable. That's so valuable, especially going into the playoffs, because you don't have to worry about your quarterback losing a game. He's not going to lose the game, and he's going to know how to work the game. And I think that's something we saw from Fernando Mendoza. So, look, I'm excited about what he's going to be offering, and I think he's going to connect. I think the Micah Gilbert buzz that's coming is going to be a perfect complement to Jordan Faison. I think Mylan Graham in the slot is a perfect complement. I think everything that they have really for this team this year, which is why I uttered earlier in the show that he's surrounded by a better team, in my opinion. As highly as we thought about the 2025 team, I just think this team is, I'm talking about totality. You might not have 2 first rounders, right? If CJ has a great season, he's a first rounder.
Sure.
Right? KVA may be a first rounder if he has an incredible season. But in totality, A to Z, I haven't seen it since the Lou Holtz days. Like the core of Lou Holtz, like from 89 to 93, that was just insane roster construction and talent. And this is what we're seeing right now. I'm jealous. I wish I could quarterback a team this good.
Man.
I know you wish you could quarterback a team this good.
Look, man. You know who you're talking to? Yeah, I would have loved that, bro. Absolutely would have loved that. But I'm with you completely. The standard for CJ Carr this year, the ceiling for him is exceptionally high. I agree with everything that you said. I'm glad you also said that this is the best quarterback that you've seen kind of covering the team. It doesn't have the same effect when I say it because we have to go back 2 years since I started covering the team. But I've been watching for a very long time, and those are some of the things that I really think are valuable that CJ brings to the table. You mentioned, kind of like decision making and having control of the offense. That's really the final point of all of this. Of what does he have to do on the field? It's improved decision making. Now, I don't necessarily mean like no interceptions. Like the way that CJ plays, there's just going to be interceptions, and I'm okay with some interceptions as long as on the flip side you have 30 touchdowns. You know what I mean? Like I'm not throwing my hands in the air asking what the heck happened because he had 6 picks last year. There were going to be mistakes that he was going to make as a redshirt freshman that we, Mike Denbrock, Marcus Freeman, we're just going to kind of have to live with because that's how CJ is. Because he's so advanced in how he views the game, and he has a little bit of that gunslinger to him, that they were just going to have to kind of live with some of those mistakes that he made. But what do I mean by improved decision-making? Naturally, some of those corrections are just going to come with age. The newness is gone. The newness of starting a college football game is gone. He's going through this entire fall camp not going through a quarterback battle. So all the reps that he missed out on last year while he was splitting with Kenny Minchie halfway through camp are now all his. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's like there's a lot of mistakes that he's just able to workshop in practice now that kind of he wasn't able to do last year. But what else do I mean by decision making? This offseason, you brought up a great point. By the coaching staff and other players, he's been praised for being able to put the offense into favorable situations and matchups. Some of the things, one of the most valuable things that a quarterback can do to put your team in a situation to be successful is to know when to play is dead. CJ is a ultra competitor and he wants everything out of every single snap. Sometimes getting the most out of a snap is eating a football. It's throwing it away. It is taking a sack if you're on the 11-yard line, not trying to force a ball into triple coverage, running around the backfield. I'm thinking the play against USC. Sometimes it's knowing when a play is dead, which is tough to swallow as a quarterback. Sometimes you also have to do it if it means you get points on the board. That's kind of what I mean by better decision making. Then the final piece of that, Sean, Brian broke down a play, I believe it was against Stanford. And they were running twins to one side and they had double slants going. And the read took him to Will Pauling in the slot. He caught it, picked up the first down. That's a good read. That is the correct read. But what Brian has mentioned on the show multiple times is that now that he's a year older and into the offense, maybe you don't hit the slot slant and you hit the outside slant to Jordan Faison, who had room to run. What CJ did wasn't incorrect, but now that he's a year older and a year more into the system, now he's going to be able to recognize that, hey, that safety crashed down on the inside slot, and Jordan Faison was one-on-one with the corner and had nobody behind him. At the bare minimum, that goes for 20 yards, if not a touchdown. Those are kind of the advanced reads that CJ, I'm expecting him to step into now that he's a year into the offense. I'm never going to knock a quarterback for taking what the defense gives you and moving the chains and keeping the drive alive, all those good things. But I think that is the next step in his evolution of this is the correct play, but we also know when guys like Jaden Greathouse are one-on-one. Shoot, matter of fact, the head coach went out last year and said, hey, when Jaden Greathouse is covered one-on-one, he is open. It's taking that play now this year than just, hey, the check down is there. I'm okay dumping it off for 7 yards, put our offense in a position to succeed on 2nd and 3. Whereas, hey, we have the opportunity to go pick up 19 yards on this play. Different things like that. But to your point, knowing when to do that. It's knowing when that's the appropriate time. So it's that evolution from CJ Carr that I'm also looking forward to seeing, man. I'm with you completely.
And another stat that I think really bodes well for, man, we really don't understand, based upon traditional stats, how well CJ Carr really played. Last year, according to PFF, his big time throw rate, 6.5%. Right now, we just talked about how he struggled. So big time throw rate is basically tight window throws, right? And then throws in key situations, throws made where you make plays basically out of nothing, like a scramble to the right, make a big throw back over the middle or on the sideline, and throws 50 yards down the field. Well, we just talked about how he struggled with throws outside the numbers down the field. So even with that struggle, his big time throw rate was 6.5%. Trev, the NFL league average, not college, and he was 6th in the nation in this stat. The NFL league average is 4 to 5%. Josh Allen last year was at 7.6. And this kid, as a redshirt freshman, was at 6.5. So this, when I tell you, like, yes, we want to see if he can manifest in the big moments, but I'm like sitting here like, I've seen the kid do it. I've seen him do it. I know he can do it. Now it's just about going out and doing it again and having a team around you that's going to support you and allow it to hold up when you do it. So the picture looks totally different than it probably would have looked or did look last year. So that's a stat from PFF I thought was very impressive. And it told me a lot, even more about how well he played as a first-time starter last year.
No, I think it's a great stat to follow. There are very few questions that I have about CJ Carr and basically no concerns.
You know?
One of the questions I had about him was just what was his overall arm strength. And Sean, I don't. Were you at Notre Dame's pro day this past year with me and Brian, or were you not able to make the trip over at pro day?
Yo, I was at the pro day. No,
Okay.
I did not make the pro day this year. I did not.
Okay, dude.
I was out of town for my birthday. I was out of town.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Where'd you go?
LA, of course.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anytime I can see baby girl, I'm there.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. I love it. But one of the questions that I had about CJ Carr is like, what is his true arm strength? It's like, why was your completion percentage so low on outside throws? Is it, do you not necessarily have the arm strength to get it there? Is it what, what is it with him? What is your overall arm power? Dude, I got all of those questions answered on the pro day. He was letting that thing fly. But
Mm-hmm.
that's the next step in his progression, right? Is being able to just let loose. I think a lot of times when you go back and you dive into the film, he was aiming a lot of times. When he
Yeah.
just lets it fly, like that play action post route that he threw to Malachi, he just let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And it went over 55 yards in the air. So plenty of arm strength there. No concerns, very little questions. But Sean, at the end of the day, as we kind of wrap this segment up, we're going to talk about the offensive line. We're going to talk about the defensive line. We've talked about the wide receiver room. I mean, the secondary is obviously phenomenal this year. We talked about Chris Ash, but the one major piece to Notre Dame bringing this all together and ending the title drought, something I have not seen in my lifetime, it does. All roads kind of lead back to CJ Carr. He's the missing piece. He's been the missing piece on previous teams that had amazing defenses and really good wide receiver cores and amazing offensive lines. He's the missing piece. And not to say that all the other position groups aren't important, because you need all of them. You need every individual position group on this team to play together to their highest expectation if they're going to win a title. But the difference maker is at quarterback, and that's ultimately what is on the table for CJ Carr this year. It's going to be a big year for him, but I'm excited to see it because you could say every year it's a big year for this quarterback, but then you have to get into the discussion of can they live up to that expectation. I think why we are so excited about it is because Notre Dame has a guy under center that can live up to it. You know what I mean?
I think I'll go against the grain. I think he will have less pressure this year than he had last year.
Okay.
I know if I was the quarterback, first time starter, knowing a team just got to the national championship, and I'm the guy that should help them get over the top, and I have these two dudes in the backfield with me, that knowing I have to live up to what they do, like I know they're going to come out and ball out every week. I can't mess up, which goes to your point. He was aiming at certain times. There were certain times where he might have played to not make a mistake. Like, I can't be the one that loses this game. I can't be the one that gets the blame. And maybe it gets into him aiming, like you pointed out, and other things. I think he's going to come out free now because he knows who he is now. Like he's gone through it. He's learned. He said, yo, I measured up. I, I kept up my end of the bargain with two of the best players, not running backs, but just players in all of college football. I held my own. Now he comes in free, knowing exactly who he is, knowing exactly what to do, and knowing he has more talent around him. It could be, you could say, he could be playing with less pressure this season
That's
than possibly last season, Trev.
that's actually really interesting. I never even thought about that because I mean I'm actually with you on that. Here's why. I think sometimes last year CJ would have a tendency to press a little bit.
Mm.
That's why we saw the weird. I don't want to say weird. That's why we would see the running around in the backfield trying to make the most of this one opportunity because you are sharing a backfield with Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. So you had to press a little bit. But if everything that I have come to understand about CJ Carr is true, that is somebody who wants the ball at all times. And when you're sharing a backfield with two first round NFL draft picks, it's kind of like, well, I know I'm not going to get it at least 50% of the time. So I need to make the most of my opportunity. That's not bad, man. I never even thought about it like that.
That,
Mm.
that was a lot of pressure. That was a lot of pressure he stepped into last year. And he acquitted himself very well as a first time starter. And I
Mm.
was critical of certain things in certain games. Not to be disparaging of them, but saying, yo, okay, you're playing. We know, Trev, you're the quarterback. Bro, it comes with the territory. You're going to be overanalyzed. Not for the sake of blaming you, but it's like, yo, you're the most important position on the field. We have to overanalyze the position. We have to have context and subjectivity, but at the same time, this is what comes with the territory. So, like when you talk about you can't throw at interception against USC in the red zone. You can't. At least you have to come away with a field goal, right? On that night, the field goal was
Different
questionable.
conversation for a different day. We'll see if they get it. we'll see if they get it.
Once again, to give context to that situation, hey, maybe he was thinking like, "Hey, I do."
Hey, man, that might have been going through the mind a little bit.
You can't throw the interception. You know, when you're trying to extend to a 2-possession lead, a 2-score lead against Texas A&M, you can't throw that interception to let them back in the game. Like that's right. You can get them behind and crush them right there in that moment. Those are things that you can nitpick, but you're pointing them out not to blame him for the loss, but just to talk about moving forward the things we don't expect him to, the same mistakes we don't expect him to make moving forward. Learn from those things. And I think those were pressurized. Some of those mistakes were pressurized mistakes. I don't think we get those pressurized mistakes. And I just don't think the same pressure, I don't think he's going to feel the same pressure. Maybe the pressure is there, Trev, but his capacity is different to deal with it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, look, sometimes you come across those athletes that like they do better in that pressure, which would then in turn kind of make it to where it's like there's less pressure because you're in your ideal situation. Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, you see it in the NFL. Like guys like Pat Mahomes like want the ball in those moments. The Joe Burrows of the world want the ball in those moments where it's like, hey, nobody else is relied upon except for me. And CJ strikes me as that kind of player. That's a heck of a point. Never even thought about that. Learn something new every day. How about that? Sean, it's time to talk about the Notre Dame offensive line here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We just had a really good conversation about CJ Carr. Theme for today's show is breaking down 3 critical position groups. The quarterback position, obviously talked about CJ Carr, the offensive line, and then the defensive line of the units that have to play an elite level. Now, obviously, we can talk about why they should, but we're going to talk about what is that going to look like. And we're separating this into 2 different conversations. A big picture conversation and then on-field application of what is that big picture going to look like. And, so when you talk about the offensive line, we talked a lot about kind of what CJ Carr is going to have to shoulder this season. And he has to be the driver of success and all these different things, which is true. But he can't be alone in that. We've seen great quarterbacks before in the past get hampered by a not good offensive line. I often wonder what, Jack Cohn's passing numbers would have looked like if he wasn't behind that 2021 offensive line. I often think about what other quarterbacks would have looked like if they weren't playing behind the offense, or if you take good quarterbacks and put them behind really good offensive lines, what those numbers would have looked like. And that kind of led us to this conversation with the offensive line. A big part of the responsibility of replacing Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price is going to be in the trenches. Yes, CJ's going to make plays. He's going to be a driver of success. He's going to pick up chunk plays and push the ball down the field and make highlight reel plays. I have no doubt around that. But Notre Dame is still a team that wants to have an identity establishing the line of scrimmage and running the football. I have all the confidence in the world that Aeneas Williams and Kedron Young and Nolan James Jr. and the 2 freshmen, and Jonas Walton and Javion Osborne, are going to have really, really good seasons this year. But it's not just because I think that they're going to basically just be Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price again. I think the offensive line is also going to have a bigger role in that this year with the outlook and the talent that they have. So, kind of before we dive into big picture and what they have to do on the field, this is a big year for the offensive line, Sean, because, Freeman wants to be a line-driven program, but the offensive line is not really held up its end of the bargain. Not to say that they've been bad. You don't make the national title game in 2024 with a bad offensive line. You don't. Rarely ever do you make championship appearances with a bad offensive line. That's what I think what Joe Burrow did in 21 with the Bengals. That's what made that so special, because that was one of the worst offensive lines in the sport that year, and they played for a Super Bowl. You don't make the 2024 national title game and go on the run that you did, beating Indiana and Georgia, the SEC champs, and Penn State, the Big Ten runners-up, if you don't have a really good offensive line. But now it's about getting them to championship caliber. And that, I think, is what is on the doorstep for Joe Rudolph's unit this year, man.
Trev, you hit the nail on the head right there towards the end, getting there to championship caliber, right? Because this has been, unfortunately, the offensive line in Notre Dame has been one of my biggest tug of wars with Notre Dame fans, right? Um, because of the recruitment, because of the development, because of matriculation to the NFL, and how well Notre Dame offensive linemen play in the NFL. Notre Dame fans will always tell me when I give critiques, man, that's been the most consistent group. How can you talk about them? And then last year is a perfect reason to point to what you just said. There's an elevation that needs to get to championship level. Yes, they were third best yards per carry at 5.69. Yes, they were sixth at 203 yards per game. Yeah, even protecting the passer. They were eighth in the nation, giving up 1 sack per game. Ha ha ha. Third short conversion rate, though. They were 12 of 27 at 44%. Not good. And then against the best two and most talented and most athletic defensive lines that they faced the first two games, 13 tackles for loss and 5 sacks. See, that's once again, we talk about CJ Carr in the moments, this offensive line in the moments against the toughest competition has not been able to perform at the same level. And I say it all the time. Man, when you go up against other great players, you're going to win, you're going to lose. You're going to have to fight for your life, man. You have to fight. Pat Coogan was dominant all year long. He was fighting for his life against Miami. You go watch the film, man. He was scuffling on some snaps, straight scuffling. And then some snaps, he won. You have to find that level ground as an off. It can't be a dip off. You can't be as consistent as they were against other teams. But then against Texas A&M and Miami, you're giving up negative plays like that. That's a direct impact on your ability to control the game and to allow your quarterback and your other talented players to be able to make plays and win the game for you. So, yeah, that's what's needed. For me, the offensive line last year came down to 2 games, the first two. That's it. Really, after that, Trev, there was no test. That was no USC wasn't a test in the trenches. What? That's not a test. So I'm sorry. I just don't look at the stats and say, oh, Jeremiah went for 200. Yeah. Part of that's because they had a defensive staff dumb enough to go too high all night long.
In the rain.
In the rain. Who does that? Trev, look, I'm not here to say that the offensive line has not been good. The offensive line in Notre Dame is always good when we compare them to the rest of college football. You're always going to have a good offensive line when you compare it to everyone else. So yes,
Sure.
we should be appreciative and happy about that. But if we're talking about winning a national championship, I haven't seen that offensive line yet. I haven't seen it. It hasn't manifested yet. Now, talent, this could be it when it comes to talent, ability, and depth. This could be that offensive line. This could be the next Joe Moore Award finalist and possibly winning offensive line. Absolutely. That's the expectation that has been set. And it's perfect with the two running backs going to the NFL. That pressure shifting to the offensive line now with new running backs starting to say, okay, lean on us. Lean on us. We're not going to lean on the running backs anymore. Lean on us in the biggest moments to protect the quarterback and to pave the way for these running backs, right? Because I say it again, against teams like BYU on the road, SMU at home, and Miami, it's not going to be the gaudy stats. It's not going to be the gaudy stats. It's not going to be the games where you average 6-7 yards per carry. What it's going to be when you need it in short yardage, when you need it in goal line, and when you need it to control the clock and control the game late third, fourth quarter. Can this offensive line make it happen? Can they sustain drive? Those are the offensive line, just like CJ Carr, they're going to have their moments to prove that they are an elite offensive line. And more than likely, it's going to come against those three teams.
That's the biggest piece, and that's key number one in the biggest picture for this offensive line. I agree with everything that you're saying. Not only do they have the talent and the depth, now I think they have the experience. I mean, you get Anthony Knapp, who has 27 career starts. Gerby Lambert and Ashton Craig both have 12 career starts each. Sullivan Absher has, 5 career starts now under his belt. So nothing outside of Will Black is new, and he's arguably the most physically gifted guy in the trenches alongside Gerby Lambert and Anthony Knapp now at guard. So there's definitely worse spots to be in. I'm with you completely. Notre Dame as a program has an established floor at the offensive line. Year in and year out, there is just an expected level. But that's what made 2021 such an anomaly of like, what the heck is going on here? Like, why is this the product that we're seeing on the field? Because as a program, really since 2011, you could argue 2010, but really 2011 and on, there's been an established foundation and a floor for what the Notre Dame offensive line should be. But I'm with you. Because of the talent, because of the experience, that gives a little bit more cause to the argument of like, this should be the line that is the tone setter. And that's key point number one. Can you be that tone setter in the big moments? I'm with you. I don't care that they didn't allow a single pressure or this individual player only allowed one pressure from Purdue on. I care about what you did in Miami and Texas A&M. In the same vein, I'm not going to give a rip if you don't allow a pressure against Rice, or if you held Michigan State at bay, if then on November 7th you allow 4 pressures. That's not going to carry much weight with me. But look at this game against this really bad team. That's not going to carry much weight with me. Can this offensive line step up in the big moments? And I'm talking big picture moments down to minuscule moments, like a drive. You know, it's been hit or miss the last couple of years under Joe Rudolph. It has, if we're looking at this objectively. They were good against Indiana and Georgia in the playoffs, and then they were bad in the first half against Penn State. And then guess what happened, Sean? They turned things around in the second half against Penn State, and they outscored them 24-14. And then you were bad against Ohio State in the title game outside of the first drive. What happened on that first drive, Sean? It was like 11 minutes long. You know what I mean? It's been an inconsistent sample size from this offensive line. And on one side, that's kind of frustrating because, like, hey, we've seen you do this with arguably less talent. And I don't even know if it's arguable because on those lines that we saw play really well against Georgia, they didn't have Gerby Lambert on the field. They didn't have Will Black on the field. They didn't have Ashton Craig on the field, and they didn't have Anthony Knapp at guard. So those are all the reasons why we believe that this is going to be an offensive line that can be a tone setter, but can you be that in the big moments? We've rattled off the dates. You guys get it. BYU, Miami, SMU, and into the postseason. But then can you also be that unit situationally that can go put games away? Like, what made that drive so special against Georgia with 7.5 minutes left on the clock? All the attention goes to like, oh, the fake punt was crazy and he outcoached Kirby Smart. All of those things are true. But what did that offense do? They leaned on their offensive line, bled the clock dry, and that's what you're going to have to do. To your point, it didn't look super sexy. I think Riley Leonard's longest run of that drive was like 8 yards. You know, it's not like Jeremiah Love was gashing him for 15 at a time and putting it away, but can you be that offensive line you were consistently on the final drive against Georgia, on the final drive against Texas A&M to open the season, in the second half against Penn State? Those are the things that I think we need to see. You know what I mean? And as long as they're able to be that offensive line, I have a lot of confidence moving forward of what they can be. But it's stepping up in the big moments is going to be huge, along with playing with consistent physicality and aggression. We had a question. It's either a buy-sell hold or we were talking about, I think, in yesterday's show. When you do this many shows, the days start to run together. I know you get how that goes. But you know, I mentioned in yesterday's show, one of my favorite quotes ever from a Notre Dame offensive lineman was from Quentin Nelson on his pro day when he said, every snap I want to make my opponent lose the will to play the game of football. First of all, that's just a cold line, and I think this would be put on a t-shirt.
That's diabolical.
Yeah, man, that's nasty work. But it reflected in the way that he played every snap. in 2017. It wasn't just against Georgia that he had that. It wasn't just against, NC State at home that he had that, or just against USC that he had that. He was that way week in and week out. That's what made him such a dominant offensive lineman. My challenge to the offensive line was, can you be that? You don't have to have Quentin Nelson's God-given ability to have that mentality. Sure. Does it help being 6'6", 340 pounds? Sure. But you don't have to be that to have that mentality. That's another big picture thing that I want to see from this offensive line, Sean, is consistently, key word, because under Joe Rudolph, hey, in 2023, I thought the offensive line played great against Ohio State. They didn't lose that game because of the offensive line. They lost against Louisville because of the offensive line. Why? Because you brought the intensity against Ohio State, the big primetime matchup under the lights, Kelly Green jerseys, top 10 game. But you didn't bring it with you to Louisville, Kentucky, and it came back to bite you. Can you be that week in and week out? And if they're able to answer that question, I'm going to feel a heck of a lot better about Notre Dame's chances, not just on September 6th when they take on Wisconsin at Lambeau Field, a game where they're favored by 20.5 points on FanDuel. I'm not just going to feel better about it on November 7th or on October 17th. I'm going to feel better about it over the course of the season. If they're able to answer that question, Sean, I think they're going to be in a really good spot. And if not, we're going to be having the same conversation that we did last year. Let's see what we get from the offensive line this week. Because I'm fully confident in saying, and people in the chat can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure we were all confident in saying that last year when they were going to play Boston College or Boise State or Syracuse, that to some degree we knew the offensive line was going to play well. But against Miami, Texas A&M, USC, Pitt, the offensive line was a big question against Pitt. Remember, we talked a lot that year. We talked a lot last year about Francis Brew. If the interior of the offensive line was going to be able to step up with Sullivan Absher at left guard going into his second career start. So there was a lot of moving pieces going on with the offensive line. But if they're not able to get that shored up, there's going to be a lot of questions that we have about this unit moving forward. Having said that, if they're able to answer this question, I'm sure we will all feel a lot better about Notre Dame's chances of ending their title drought, because it starts there. They're your tone setters. When I look at a football team, and you can use any different phrase you want. Who's your get off the bus people? Who's your get off the bus first? Or who's your, who's walking out for the coin flip? All of those things are true, but your tone setters are on the offensive line, really in the trenches. And if they're able to come out and set the tone, that makes CJ Carr's job a heck of a lot easier. It makes Mike Denbrock's job a heck of a lot easier. That makes all of the running backs' jobs a heck of a lot easier if they're able to come out and set that tone. But Sean, when was the last time, probably 2020, that an offensive line consistently came out with that level of consistency and aggression? Is that what you say the last time you saw that, 2020? Is that fair?
That's fair. Yeah. That 2020 line, that's fair. And there are a lot of things we could talk about. Are we still big picture? Because I don't want to jump ahead.
No, you're good. Still big picture. Just kind of talk about the consistent physicality and aggression.
Yeah. I think it goes to what we talked about with short yardage, right? And the impact. How does that impact? You talked about how it impacts the running backs and the quarterback. How does it impact Mike Denbrock as a play caller? What confidence does he have against bigger competition? Can he be aggressive? Does he have to be passive and kind of work his way into the game, until he's able to trust and find calls that he can trust the offensive line to execute? Those are things when you give a play caller the ultimate trust, I can call anything at any time. Because the one thing I know is they're going to execute. They're not going to allow penetration in the run game, and they're going to protect the quarterback and allow the wide receivers to run their routes and for the plays to develop. So for me, I would love to see how now Mike Denbrock and what he's able to do from a confidence standpoint with play calling, having an offensive line that we talk about the talent, Trev, and the experience, but what is being conveyed. You hear players talking about this cat, which it's been said on this show for over just about 2 years. If you move Anthony Knapp to guard, he's probably going to be an All-American. And when we hear the buzz, like Jalen Sneed's like Anthony Knapp is just every day. No kidding. Like that's his position. That's his All-American position. That's the position he's going to get drafted high in the NFL to play. And to see him playing his position and hearing the buzz and the opportunity and people talk, we knew Gerby Lambert immediately. He got his footing after sharing snaps, and once he got his footing early on, you saw it. It was like you watched the film, like, yo, this kid snap to snap might be the best offensive lineman they have. So, like, we're not shocked hearing based upon the talent and the experience. And like you said, man, now the challenge is that has come up, which is very interesting. Can they be physical? But
Going to be a huge piece.
now they actually have a really good defensive line to test them
Yeah.
before they get to the regular season. That for me is the most profound difference that I think is going to benefit them come October and November. Like they've already faced defensive lines that's similar. I definitely can tell they didn't face anything like what they saw week one against Miami. They didn't see that all fall camp. No. They didn't see that type of tenacity, size, athleticism, speed, and you saw it again against Texas A&M. They struggled. Two totally different fronts, a much smaller, more athletic front, and they like to do a lot of different schemes and stunts with Mike Elko. But you have to be able to handle both things, whether it's a traditional front four that can just get after the quarterback and interrupt the run game with those four and allowing the linebackers to come and run to the ball, or somebody like Mike Elko that's going to bring pressure, is going to give you different looks. You still have to be able to handle it as an offensive line. But when we commingle, what we said about CJ Carr and his ability to see everything, handle everything, and get them into the right protection and the right play, along with the experience and the talent, you start to feel really good about them being able to make an imprint for Mike Denbrock, his play calling, and for the quarterbacks in the skill positions, like you said, Trev.
The final piece to the big picture conversation, I'll be brief with this one because you could make this argument for every position group on the team, but it is health. A big key to their success is going to be remaining relatively healthy and then staying ready in the depths. This has been a position group that has been hit pretty hard with the injury bug. Notre Dame, if they're going to win a title this year, is also not going to be the first offensive line in college football history that has to overcome at least one injury. Yeah, I mean, Ohio State in 2024 moved Donovan Jackson out to left tackle, and he was a guard. You know, like that. So there are offensive lines that have to overcome injuries. So I'm not saying, part of the job is to not suffer an injury. That's just a part of the game. I'm sure we all know that. But in previous years, when Notre Dame went on a run, who is going to be their Pat Coogan that steps in this year? Who is going to be their Rocco Spindler that steps in this year? Who is going to be their Charles Jagasaw that could potentially have to start at left tackle as a redshirt freshman in the national title game? You know what I mean? So that's kind of the point that I'm getting at here. It's quick. It's brief. There's very little that you can do, all things considered, to prevent injuries. Like you can stretch and play consistently and make sure that Lauren Landau and the training staff are doing their jobs. But like injuries are a part of the game. So if they have a slew of injuries this year, I'm not blaming that on them, but staying relatively healthy and then the depth staying ready is going to be a big part of their success. Just figured that was something I wanted to throw in there with the offensive line because they have had their fair share of injuries there. So that's going to be a big piece of it. Big piece of it. This room is very deep. But with every major injury that you suffer, in my eyes, the ceiling goes down a little bit. You have talent in the depths, but do you really want to have to call upon a true freshman before you even make the playoffs? It's going to be a big conversation piece. If we have to get to that, hopefully we don't have to. But Sean, let's talk about some of the on-field things because we could talk about tenacity and physicality and being good in the big moments, but what does that look like? What does being good in the big moments look like? And it starts with better pass protection at tackle. I think last year, especially against Miami, I can confidently say that was one of the worst offensive tackle performances I've seen. Not singling out a player, because it's whoever rotated in. Knapp took time out on the sideline. Styles Prescott came in. Emil Wagner was playing, who was a returning starter and a captain. All encompassing, that was probably the worst offensive tackle performance that I've seen. At one point in time, your right tackle was turned around trying to box out Akeem Mesidor like a power forward going up for a rebound. It was a bad display. It was terrible. And look, there's a world where CJ Carr drives down the field, final possession of the game, gets a field goal, and they go into overtime. Knowing what we know now, question marks about the place kicking game. But at that point in time, Noah Burnett was fine. There was no injury. There was no. So offensive tackle has to be better in pass protection this year. Here's the good news. I don't want this to come off and sound disparaging. We're just hammering on the 2025 offensive tackles. Here's the good news. You now have your biggest outlook at offensive tackle since 2023, when Joe Alt and Blake Fisher were your offensive tackles. You have Gerby Lambert and Will Black, two 6'7" guys. Will Black is 316 pounds. Gerby Lambert is 335 pounds, 330 pounds. Both are very athletic. Both are very light on their feet with heavy hands. But if this line is going to be what we think that they can be, the edge has to be protected better on the offensive line if CJ Carr is going to be who we think he can be. If the perimeter run game is going to be what we think it can be. Those are all going to be important, because you can have the best quarterback in the world. He's not going to complete a lot of passes if he's running for his life half the time. You know what I'm saying? So the offensive tackle and pass protection is going to have to elevate this year.
Trev, come into my world for a second, okay? If you were an elite scorer on the basketball court,
sure,
at all three levels, and you were 6'6", and I was 6'1", and I didn't have good lateral quickness, it's not too much I can do if you're elite. All I can do is just give over-the-top effort. Be physical with you, try to bump you off your spot, hand in your face. There's nothing really I can do. Why? I have question marks as a defender. What you just explained is that physically, the question marks that were there at tackle, just from a physical talent standpoint, they're not there with these two youngsters. They're not. The inexperience is there at tackle, playing the position. But we had experience at tackle, but it was questions about foot speed, area quickness, being able to anchor.
Comfortability in space.
Comfortability, space, right. You just told us those things don't exist with these two big talented tackles, right? So I would much rather have the physical capabilities at tackle and not have those questions, with an understanding they have to really play. Now they just have to play and learn, because physically they can hold up. I don't have to worry about them holding up in space, holding up physically. They're athletic, they're big, they're talented, and they have good punch. See, that's a comfort zone at tackle, man, that we didn't have. That we just didn't have. And that's not, once again, not to be disparaging or beat up on the previous tackles, but that's just the honest truth. Those are the facts about who they were as players. And now we get to move one guy inside to where he can play to his strengths and be an All-American type at left guard. So, yeah, that's definitely a key. Can those tackles hold up? I feel more comfortable. I don't think anything would have changed if you put Will Black and Gerby Lambert as the starting tackles last year, game 1 down in Miami. I don't really think anything changes. Because I don't think they would have been ready for those two guys coming off the edge. Regardless of the physical talent, I still think they might have been a little bit overwhelmed.
Sure.
Right? But the one thing they would have had is, in that moment, I don't see I can't sit here and say definitively, but they would have been much more equipped to be able to deal with those guys coming around the edge with speed on that last drive in space. They would have been physically capable of being able, which is why I gave you the example. Like I'm just not physically capable of doing anything with you, Trev, at 6'6". I can give you all the effort in the world. I can play my butt off. You know what I'm saying? I can
Yeah.
do everything that I have. I can give you everything that I have in my capabilities, and it's not enough, right? And I think that's the best way to describe what we got from our tackles. Our tackles gave us everything that they had. I truly believe that they gave us everything that they had, but now we just have guys at tackle that have deeper wells. They have some things to go to, some tools to go to that the other
Oh,
tackles just didn't have. And so that, is what we talk about going from being good at that position, like we were good at that position, but now we have the potential, keyword potential, to be championship level at that position. And so,
yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, look, when the offensive tackles were struggling last year against Akeem Mesidor and Ruben Bain, I never questioned if they wanted to be out there. You know
yeah,
what I
some
mean?
people
Like,
did though. Some people were nasty about it and
yeah,
questioned certain things. I never questioned whether or not
no,
they didn't want to give up those sacks. They didn't want
right,
to stop their team. He didn't want to look like he was boxing out. I don't think Emil Wax, yo, sometimes the guy across from you is just a little bit bigger, faster, and stronger and better,
sure.
right? And we saw when he went up in the Orange Bowl, he went up against that beast who
Abdul
was
Carter,
playing with Abdul Carr was playing with one arm, Trev, and was still, you saw him getting pushed back because physically, just physically, has nothing. He's giving you everything he has. Physically, we already knew it's hard for him to anchor because physically, he just wasn't built on his lower half the way you would
yeah,
want most tackles to be built in a lower half. So when you face elite pass rushers that have that combination of speed and power, that's inherently going to be a problem.
absolutely.
That's going to pop out. And that's just what you saw. That's it. But I think now we're at that position. I think we got some guys that can anchor, they can move their feet, they can hit you and stop you and make you think about your pass rush, right? And so I think they're going to grow together. They might, I said this, man, they might be the best tackle. They have the potential to be the best tackle combination to get drafted. If they leave the same year, like
Sure.
the running backs left, it could be the best tackle combination to ever play together at Notre Dame. That's the potential they have.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that. And here's the bright side too. We're not going to have to wait long to see what that looks like. I think that there's this narrative about Notre Dame's schedule. I'm not going to get into whether people think it's good or bad or weak or
Yeah.
soft or good. That's not the point of this. I do believe, however, that the offensive tackles individually will get tested throughout the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's just this thought that it's like, well, we're not going to even know what Will Black is capable of until they play Miami. I'm not a part of that group. I mean, you get Makart Abujade, obviously health pending all of these conversations and these situations. But you get Makart Abujade, and I'm sure I'm probably butchering his name, so apologies to him, at North Carolina. I mean, he had over 40 pressures last year coming up from Delaware. He didn't have 40 pressures at Delaware. He transferred to North Carolina at the start of the 2025 season, went up to the P4 level, and was still a dominant edge player. You get Tavara Tafiti at Stanford. You get Bodie Schoonover at BYU, who's a good player. He's more of like the high motor kid, you know, but you're still getting tested with the environment, the altitude, the this. And so you're going to have more tests than just when they face Marquise Lightfoot and Armando Blunt and Damon Wilson at Miami. It's not just going to be, well, we're really only going to know what they are against Miami and then who they are in the postseason. So they will get tested individually. And that's something that I'm also keen on seeing because last year Notre Dame didn't really know what they had at tackle post the Texas A&M game because it was like who was going to test him. To your point, like if they were going to make the postseason, it's like the last time we watched them go up against a really good playoff caliber defensive end duo was Miami, and that did not go well for Notre Dame. So who can they be if they make the postseason? Obviously, we know how that story played out. But, Sean, it's not just about the offensive tackles, what we need to see from them on the field. It's also about the interior of the offensive line. Can they get a more consistent push in the run game? That's going to be a big piece. I saw somebody in the chat earlier talked about how they thought the offensive line played well against Texas A&M from a pass protection standpoint. I'll concede that. Like it was definitely an improvement from what they were against Miami, albeit that's a relatively pretty low bar. But they were better in pass protection against Texas A&M than they were. But where I think they started to lack a little bit was getting a good interior push in the run game against Texas A&M. They weren't consistently able. It was a lot of feast or famine in that game. It was Jeremiah Love rips off a 20-yard run and then got stuffed 3 straight times. It was Jadarian Price ripped off a 22-yard run for a touchdown, but then got stuffed 3 straight times. Can they get a good, consistent interior push? A lot of things working in their favor, Sean. Anthony Knapp is probably their most physical, consistently physical run blocker coming back, and now he's playing a position he's more comfortable. If Ashton Craig is able to stay healthy, there's a long track record of Notre Dame having a lot of success on the ground when Ashton Craig is on the field. Having said that, the other bonus to this is if Joe Otting is the guy, Notre Dame had their best rushing performance of the season when Joe Otting was their starting center. He was the starting center against USC last year. And then can Sullivan Absher take that next step as a run blocker? Because I have very little questions about him as a pass protector. Dude played 171 pass blocking snaps last year, allowed 2 pressures. Pressures, not sacks, not hits on the quarterback, pressures. So for those who might not know, that means he allowed 2 guys to get past him in all of his starts combined. And one of those pressures was allowed in the Miami game when he was rotating with Gerby Lambert. So in 5 career starts, he allowed 1 pressure. That's not too bad. But can he take that next step as a run blocker? We'll see. The running back room is going to need it. But, Sean, a consistent interior push in the run game is going to be huge for this unit.
I think one of the most beautiful things that we've heard coming out of this camp goes to what you just said with Sullivan Absher. Of course, that falls in line with what? When he got to Notre Dame, we expected he could possibly be a tackle, right? Be in space. That bodes well for him being a pass protector. Like you said, the stats that you just gave, you look for him to step up with the run game. But now when you hear we're trying to get the best 5 on the field, right? And then you start hearing about, which is a blessing in disguise. You don't want it to ever come from someone being injured. Ashton Craig goes down. Joe Otting has to come in, acquits himself very well. Almost the same way that Ashton Craig had to come in at Clemson on the road after 2 centers went down. And the next thing you know, guys are transferring out. He becomes the starting center. That just once again goes to the recruiting and development at the O-line position at Notre Dame and the depth of it. But now you start talking about, is Ashton Craig going to be that right guard? Is that who Sullivan Absher now has to battle? Do they remain with Ashton Craig at center? Or does Joe Otting make that development no longer a conversation with the way he's performing in fall camp when it comes to getting the best 5 guys on the field? We talked about their low efficiency in short yardage situations, especially in the run game, which is disappointing with the talent they had at running back. But, it is what it is. The interior that I think moving Anthony Knapp to left guard is going to pay so many dividends. Whoever's at center, having him next to them is going to elevate their play, right? And so, and it adds depth. It stretches you out from a depth standpoint to move Anthony Knapp inside. And so I just think it was the right decision to make. I would have made the decision in the middle of last season. Once Billy Schrauth went down. When Billy Schrauth went down, I would have been like, okay, Anthony, we're going to move you to guard because you can play that naturally. Go ahead. let Will Black start getting some reps, or even move Gerby to left tackle at the time and
I was
move
just
the.
about to say I would have been all for that move if Will Black didn't spend last year playing guard. Different conversation for a different day, but it
I
is
didn't
what
mean
it
to
is.
set you up on the tee like that.
Look, man, that's the stuff that gets me fired up, Sean.
I
Come on
know,
now.
I know, I know, I know. I didn't recognize it until I said it. Like, oh, Trev's about to hit this one 300 right down the center of the fairway. He's about to rip this one.
Yeah, but look, I'm with you completely. I think Anthony Knapp being at guard elevates the play at center, but what I also think it does is it gives Will Black the thing that Anthony Knapp did not have when he stepped in as an inexperienced player at left tackle. I think Sam Pendleton is going to have a great year this year at Tennessee as their starting center, and I think he could have been a heck of a player at Notre Dame. But you did both of those players a disservice by putting a true freshman and a redshirt freshman start next to each other, not putting Billy Schrouth at left guard next to Anthony Knapp to have some experience. Now, hopefully, this is Joe Rudolph looking in the mirror and saying, okay, I've made this mistake once. I'm going to give Will Black what I did not give Anthony Knapp. And they put the most experienced member of this offensive line from a starts standpoint. Obviously, Ashton Craig and Selvin Absher have been a part of the program longer. But from a start standpoint, the only returning starter on the offensive line that has played in a college football playoff game, they put him next to the most inexperienced member of the starting lineup in Will Black. I think that's going to be huge as well. I'm with you completely. I think that move is going to be huge.
I mean, he really is. Anthony Knapp really is a wonderful utility player.
Yeah.
He can play center. He can play both guard positions. He's played left tackle. I mean, when you have somebody like that, I forget the kid. The kid from Alabama that played center one year, played tackle another year.
Oh,
I think he jumped Barrett Jones. Barrett Jones, yes. I think Anthony Knapp's a little bit more talented, a little more athletic than Barrett Jones, who have an NFL career.
Stronger.
But stronger, yeah. But that's just the type of player he is. And when you have that type of player, you can use that, like I said, to strengthen your depth and find that combination. Because you can move him. He's that talented. He can move around and be effective, right? And so I think that's the biggest thing for me. I think that move is really going to pay dividends for the interior of the offensive line. That's you moving him to the interior, so that's the first impact. But I think him being next to Will Black is a lesson learned from what you just pointed out. You have a very good player that's a veteran next to a young player that's doing it for the first time at tackle, the way it should have been done for him when he got his first start against Texas A&M. Lesson learned.
The final piece of this conversation, we wrap up the offensive line here, Sean, is one area that this unit has to be get better at and get more consistent at is picking up blitz and stunts. I can't tell you Sean, how many times last year in the post game show did we talk about the issues that gave these offensive linemen in pass protection? Now, look, I think this year you're going to face even more of that because this offensive line, it's very athletic. It's also massive. I mean, Anthony Knapp went from being one of your bigger offensive linemen last year to he is now your smallest offensive lineman at 6'5", 305. Your tackles are both 6'7". Will Black is 316. Gerby Lambert's 330. Selvin Absher 6'7", 6'8", 325. Ashton Craig is 6'5", 315. They're going to be facing some smaller defensive lines this year, which I think are going to play a lot of line games with Notre Dame. There was a play in the national title game where they either sent a delayed blitz or wrapped around the D end on a stunt. I don't remember which one it was. But backside D end or backside linebacker loops around, and Pat Coogan is there, arms out, and just lets him run by. Because there is no communication up front. Communication on stunts and lineman games have to be better this year. That's another reason why I think moving Anthony Knapp inside to guard alongside an inexperienced Will Black is going to help that. Communicate. Joe Rudolph talked about this after one of the fall camp practices of like communication is getting better. And so that's where I need to see this offensive line continue to improve. I was very impressed with what we saw in the spring from Selvin Absher and Gerby Lambert in that vein, because based on watching them in the spring, you would have thought they'd been starting together for 2 years. it was seamless, and it was very impressive to see. But that's something that has to get better, Sean, because I know that's something you and I talked quite a bit about last year in post game shows.
Like you said, you pointed out that championship game is something that they struggled with in the 2024 season and the 2025 season, right? So at some point, when are we going to institute something that's different? When are we going to shift the direction of how this is being handled, right? Um, I'm going to be a little bit objective here, Trev. It's fair to say in preparation, it's better to play teams, especially if you're a team or a defensive coordinator like a Mike Elko that does a lot of that stuff, to play a team week 1 or week 2 early in the season, right? That's the best time to throw those things at an offensive line when they really don't have your team on film, right? And don't really know your situational things, what you like to do in those situations, and what they can expect. So I'll give some grace playing a talented Mike Elko defense early in the season, as opposed to, because I felt like if they played Texas A&M in the playoffs last year, they would have blown Texas A&M out. I fully believe Notre Dame would have demolished Texas A&M. I watched them go that game they played against Miami. Oh, if Notre Dame walks in there, Jeremiah Love, they're killing that team. They're winning by at least 10 points. I truly believe that. So, but then you also give other teams a blueprint when they watch you do that to Notre Dame early in the season to say, okay, this is how we can
Yeah.
attack them, right? So it's going to be very important coming out against Wisconsin that there is a clear message like, no, not anymore. You can't come at us like that anymore. You better find something else. Those days are over. The 2024 and 2025 performance from the offensive line when it comes to stunts, blitzes, and games, nah, that's not it. You have to find another weapon. And you have to do that. You have to punish Wisconsin. You have to punish the entire first quarter of this schedule. Just punish it. Send a message. Put film out there as an offensive line that makes coordinators say, okay, man, this is a different Notre Dame on the offensive line. Now we have to figure out how we can attack them. Because traditionally, you know that this team, as a team and as an offensive line, has gotten better as the season goes on, in spite of the injuries that you pointed out
Yeah.
earlier in the show, Trev. So that that's something that I'll be looking for from this offensive line. Like, I want to see a message sent. Not so much about Wisconsin. Wisconsin's the opponent, but we're sending a message to everyone that has to watch film on us. Nah, we're a totally different beast up front this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, if they're able to do that, I'm a firm believer because of the physicality and the size and the talent in this offensive line room. They're going to face very, very few defensive lines. I'm talking just in college football, not just on the regular season schedule, that can just go one up on them. You know what I mean? Like very few where it's like, hey, we got a guy that can just match this guy. I think defensive lines are going to have to get really creative with how they attack Notre Dame's offensive line. If they are able to come out and make that statement against Wisconsin, that's going to be huge because I agree with everything. Look, Rice does not have a defensive lineman that they can just say, yeah, just go toe to toe with Sullivan Absher. Yeah, just go one up with Gerby Lambert. They're going to have to throw games at him. They're going to have to disguise things. They're going to have to play a bunch of games, twists, stunts, all that.
Do you have I'll lean on you for a second. Do you have a preference right now when they talk about the best five? Because I started to think about when it comes to protecting the passer, man, I think having Anthony Knapp next to Will Black is going to be so invaluable early when it comes to stunts, communication, all of that. Having that veteran next to him is going to be invaluable. Now I go to the other side, and it could be Ashton Craig to Gerby or Sullivan Absher to Gerby. You talked about Sullivan Absher, how good he is in pass protection. So maybe in those games, that combination of Absher and Lambert, as far as pass protection, might end up being a little bit better and might lend itself to say, man, let's keep Ashton at center then instead of moving him. Ashton might be a little bit better in the run game, but you still have, whether it's Absher or Ashton at guard, the communication and the experience that's going to be able to be next to that young tackle. For me, that's what really gives me confidence, right? More than any other season outside the talent and the experience. It's really the alignment and things being aligned and positioned to put the guys in the best position to be able to handle things a lot better than previous offensive lines. I
As
guess
far as
point do right now, do you have a preference of how you would want it to look?
in general, no. I'm going to give a little bit of coach speak, and then I'll give a different answer.
Yeah.
I just want the best five. If that's Absher at guard and Craig at center, then it's Absher at guard and Craig at center. If that's Ashton at right guard and Joe Otting at center, then that's Joe Otting at center and Ashton. But look, truthfully, I don't have a preference. Now, if I were the coach, I'm leaving Ashton Craig at center because then I start weighing out, okay, how much of a gap, how much of an improvement am I going to see in the run game at Craig at guard versus Absher not on the field versus what does it look like in pass protection when both Craig and Absher are out there? If that makes sense. Like I'm kind of weighing like, does having Ashton Craig at guard in the run game outweigh having Sullivan Absher on the field in pass protection? And honestly, the difference might be marginal.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
what benefit am I doing? Like, is it like a Rob Peter to pay Paul type of situation of like, yeah, we're going to be stout in the run game, but we're kind of taking a step back in pass protection? Or is it Absher is a good enough run blocker that he can just do his job? I'm not expecting a Quentin Nelson performance and Aaron Banks type of performance out of Sullivan Absher this year in the run game.
Yeah.
But if he can just do his job and be that guy while remaining who he is in pass protection, I think that kind of outweighs Ashton Craig maybe being a little bit more of a dominant run blocker, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm very interested in the guys behind them too. When we talk about the depth, right? Because let's say you do move Ashton, right? Now you have, if something happens to Ashton, who has dealt with injuries, you're pretty confident in Sullivan coming in at the guard position. And is that move of Joe Otting to center, is that bolstered by the fact that you really like what Cam Herron is doing at center as well? Right? So now you don't have to worry about, if you make that move, your two centers are Cam Herron and Joe Otting. And now you got your two guys and guard, you're good right there. Like,
Sure.
so if something happens, you have to sit a kid, you're fine at that. It's just a lot to think about. And it's very interesting. I'm very interested in seeing how they come out of fall camp. Very interesting. But I love the fact that those conversations are being had because it just talks about the multiple looks that they can give to teams on the offensive line and just figuring out which one is better.
The other thing that I agree, Sean, the other thing that I love is it also kind of doesn't matter. How many years have we talked about it's like, hey, it's got to be this guy?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'm not somebody that separates myself into the camp of I'm team Ashton Craig at center, I'm team Sullivan Absher at guard. However, I will go on to say I do think he's being overlooked by a lot of people. Not saying that you're saying that. I just think by the masses, a lot of people still believe that Sullivan Absher is just this placeholder until Matty Augustine comes back healthy or Charles Jagasaw comes back healthy. Or I don't view him as that at all. I think Sullivan Absher can be a very good football player for Notre Dame. But I don't separate myself into those camps. Like, I have an idea of what the offensive line is going to be from left to right. It's Will Black, it's Anthony Knapp, then it's Ashton Craig, then Sullivan Absher, and then Gerby Lambert against Wisconsin. But if they roll out the football against Wisconsin on Sunday, September 6th, and the starting lineup is from left to right, Will Black, Anthony Knapp, Joe Otting, Ashton Craig, and Gerby Lambert, or Will Black, Anthony Knapp, Joe Otting, Sullivan Absher, and Gerby Lambert, because maybe Ashton just isn't quite ready to go. I'm not going to sit in the postgame show and be like, blasphemous. What is Joe Rudolph doing, man? Like what? How could he even think? Like
Yeah,
that's what above all else. That's what I love about this offensive line room because in years past it has to be this guy
yeah,
or else this line is not going to be what it can be this year.
yeah,
And we've seen Joe Rudolph offensive lines be like, all right, well, I don't like this personnel decision. I don't think you can reach your true potential as a unit if this guy's not on the field. Whereas this year, it's like, I guess if you play Joe Otting in week one, you're starting the center that had statistically Notre Dame's two best run game performances of the year last year. Darn.
yeah,
So like that's what I love. The margin for error for this unit is much higher than what it's been in years past.
yeah.
Sean, let's switch gears. Talk about the Notre Dame defensive line here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Just got done talking about the offensive side of the ball and what they need to do for Notre Dame to achieve its ultimate goal. Talked about CJ Carr at quarterback. We talked about the offensive line. And now it's time to talk about the defensive line. We have established already that Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman want to be a line-driven program. I mentioned this to you before the show started, and I've not been shy around this fact in articles and shows throughout this offseason. I think the defensive line has lived up to their side of the bargain more so than the offensive line. Again, not that the offensive line has been bad. I just think the defensive line gets overlooked. They ended last year as the number one defensive line in college football in total pressures. Not Miami, not Indiana, not Ohio State, not Oregon, who returns all four starters. It was Notre Dame. Now, we're going to have a conversation here in a little bit that you got to get better at finishing and you have to be more effective with your front four. But just that stat alone, I think, speaks to the fact that this defensive line got overlooked last year. But there is another level for them to get to. That Charlie Partridge impact, I think, is going to be felt this year. Al Washington did a heck of a job getting this D line from like a top 25 group to like a top 10 group. And now I think it's going to be up to Charlie Partridge to finish the job and get them over that hump of that. Hey, man, that's a really good D line, too. That's one of the best defensive lines in college football. And I think that before we dive into big picture and what they got to do on the field, I think above all else, Sean, the Charlie Partridge impact this year is going to be massive for this unit.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I think one of the big things that stood out to me is how pleased he has been, you know, going from spring camp, how things looked, how he responded, the things he talked about. But then halfway through fall camp, being able to come before the media and say, look, I just said this to Coach Freeman the other day. I've yet to be disappointed by this group. That's phenomenal to hear. It's absolutely phenomenal to hear, right? Because you have guys coming in from the outside that are trying to adjust to the Notre Dame culture as they transfer in. You have guys that were in the portal that came back. They're fighting. You have fifth year guys, trying to, take their last opportunity to break through. And then you have the two, what we would call stars coming off the edge, and Bryce Young and Bubakar, that I think, if you want to use the word pressure, I think both of them are kind of under pressure to finally live up to the
Sure.
expectations that some people have for them from a production standpoint, from a number standpoint. And then you have to temper, what is the future of the position, what looks very bright with Rodney Dunham and Utade and what you had garnered in the 27 recruiting class. So
Mm.
I said this to you. What does that say to me? To kind of put a nice bow on it, Charlie Partridge, whether it's the guys on the roster or what he's been able to do on the recruiting front, guys buy in. There is absolute buy-in. There has been buy-in in the defensive line room, and I can tell you there's been buy-in on the recruiting trail. Like what he did is one thing to get a feeling. I always had a feeling that Darian Prescott, the 28 kid out of Chicago that committed, I always had a feeling that he was a Notre Dame kid.
Sure.
Just spending time around him, his family, his coaches, his youth coaches, like everybody is there when they play. Everybody, the coaches that coached him from the time he was 7, they were on the sideline watching the game and being able to talk to them. And immediately I was like, yeah, he's a Notre Dame kid. And dude, the band plays the Notre Dame fight song during the games. I kid you not. It's just like, okay, this kid is just, he's a Notre Dame kid. The system is based upon Notre Dame values. And so, but you still have to do it. You still have to get the kid to buy in. And that, is what came across not only from Coach Partridge, but the rest of the staff, including Marcus Freeman. And so that's what stands out to me, Trev, just big picture. There's been tremendous buy-in to what Charlie Partridge is bringing. Because sometimes there has been, I think, when Marcus Freeman first took over, I don't want to get too deep into it, there were rumblings of pushback by the elder statesmen of the room. And what Al Washington kind of had to deal with. And then once they left, then you really start Al Washington and what he was trying to establish really start to take over and buy in. There's a little friction early. I've never gotten the sense that there has been any friction with Charlie Partridge in the tape. I just haven't. And I really haven't gotten that, and from any of the other coaches, which speaks to them, but I think it speaks to the quality of young men that you have at Notre Dame as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it also helps too that, I loved what Al Washington and Max Bulla and Mike Mickens all did for Notre Dame, but they were relatively young coaches when they got to Notre Dame. They went out and got very experienced guys. I mean, Charlie Partridge is one of the best in the business, I believe. I mean, he's been coaching defensive line since I got into college football. You know what I mean? And you start talking about Aaron Henry, who was a defensive coordinator, and Brian John Marie, who was a linebackers coach at Michigan. It's like Notre Dame was not the first stop for these coaches, where that was the case for some of the other assistants they brought in. I'm with you completely. This defensive line is expected to vault up under Charlie Partridge, and I've loved all the things that I've seen from him from practice. Everything he does is very intentional. It's very detail-oriented, which I think is important. But, when you start talking about big picture for this defensive line, Sean, one of the biggest things is, can you actually come at people in waves? That's a big piece for me, and here's why. We're leaving this area of the offseason, but for the last couple months, it's been very easy to just kind of list off the roster and the depth chart and be like, how are you stopping Jason Onye and Elijah Hughes and Tion Gray and Francis Brew and Christopher Burgess and Boubacar Traore and Bryce Young and Rodney Dunham and Keon Keeley. And so it's easy to say that on paper when you're holding up the depth chart and be like, look at this room, it's loaded. Now we're entering the point of the preseason. I mean, Sean, they kick off, like our girl Karen in the chat said a couple hours ago, 18 days. Thank goodness. But they're kicking off in 18 days. We're quickly approaching the territory of, okay, now can you actually come at people in waves? Can you remove the stigma of just being names on the depth chart to, like in games you are just coming at people in waves? This series, it is Boubacar and Bryce, and then it's Keon and Bryce, and then it's Keon and Boubacar, and then it's Rodney and Keon, and then it's Rodney and Boubacar, and then it's Ebenezer Utade and Bryce Young. Can you actually come at people in waves? In the defensive tackle room, I'm fairly confident that we're going to see at least, at the minimum, 5 guys in the rotation. I think that's fair. Jason Onye, Elijah Hughes, Tion Gray, Francis Brew, and Armel Mukum. I'm confident you're going to see those 5 guys. Can anybody make a push and add their name to that? One thing that I love that a lot of the position coaches have said this year is they get asked about the rotation, especially at wide receiver and defensive tackle. They get asked about the rotation. They're like, hey, look, our rotation, especially now with this 5 for 5, can go as deep as it has to. But every spot's going to be earned. And I appreciate that a lot. Because it's not just, we're just going to play people because now freshmen don't lose a year of eligibility. Or, we're just going to play these people because he's a 5th-year senior. It's anybody that rotates in a game, that spot's going to be earned. But in order to do that, You have to be able to actually come at people in waves. I would love to picture a world where when Jackson Cantwell at Miami is going on snap 62, that Jason Onye is going on snap 35 and is significantly fresher. I'd like to picture a world where PJ Williams, the offensive tackle at SMU, who's one of the better tackles in the ACC, he's going on snap 68 and Bryce Young is going on snap 40. That makes the difference. It might not sound like a big difference to people, but that's a massive difference when you talk about the freshness. That's what Miami was able to do to Notre Dame last year. It wasn't just Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor every single snap. We were seeing Armando Blunt. We were seeing Marquise Lightfoot. We were seeing other guys rotate in. Sean, I think that's going to be a huge piece. Huge piece.
You're spot on with that, man. I was sitting there thinking, and it kind of opened up another door or another way of thinking about it, because I like the older guys. I like Logan Thomas. Like, we've been waiting for Logan Thomas to pop, right? And it's like, I know the connection for the fan base to Keon, but I want to see these youngsters so bad, Trev. I can't wait to see these freshman edge players. Man, when the 5-for-5 legislation went out, and there was buzz out there like, oh man, when Notre Dame bring Junior Tuihalamaka back, I'm like, no, 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 no. It was almost the same feeling like,
I feel that.
Oh my God, man, the running back. I'm ashamed, Notre Dame fans. I'm drawing a blank today. I don't know why. Big number 7.
Audric Estime?
Thank you. When Estime they were in the off season, and they were like, "Oh, he might come back." I'm like, "No, no, no." Do you see the two guys? No, we got Jadarian and Jeremiah Love. I'm ready to see them, and that's where I'm at, man. I'm excited to really see a lot of players. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think I'm beyond wanting to see Boubacar pop, Bryce pop. I'm super excited to see Madden for Rainbow in his second year. I'm super excited to see these young edge players. Like, I'm super excited to see Joey O'Brien on the field. Like that, and that just really lets you know the growth in this program. To whereas, Trev, we don't have to latch on to the guys we've seen for 2 years. You know how long people were latched on to Jordan Botelho, man? We were latched on to Jordan Botelho for like, what, 3 seasons, Trev? Like, we were latched. Same thing with Jason Onye. We've been latched on to Jason Onye. And it's like, you know what? We can release those guys. Right? Because it's like, all right, either you're going to produce, or, we got guys behind you that can come in waves. That goes to your point. Yeah, we have waves now. We can come at you. And so I'm excited for so many different reasons about for the first time. I don't know how you feel. For the first time, I think this defense truly can be front to back impactful. Because I think it's been back to front as far as impact.
Yeah.
I think teams have feared the back end to the linebackers more than they feared the defensive line. I think this defensive line has a chance to kind of invert that and cause teams to fear the defensive line and how they can come at you. And I think that's going to make the play of the linebackers, which is crazy, and the defensive backs that much better if they could be that impactful up front.
Yeah, I would say at least for the first time since 2018, when you had Julian Okwara and Khalid Kareem and Ade Ogundeji and Dalen Hayes. I would say for the first time since that year, this defensive line has a chance to, and that's what Chris Ash wants. Not saying that is a bad thing. Like, he wants to be foundationally, he wants to be built around the defensive line. That's why it took a little bit for the D line and the coverage to marry up, to use the term that Marcus Freeman said. That's why it took a little bit of time, because it's an adjustment from what they had to go from. But I'm with you. I think this defensive line has a chance to be the foundation of this defense in the run game, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit, and from a pass rushing standpoint, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But I'm with you. I think this defensive line absolutely has a chance to be the foundation of this defense and let the best linebacker room in the country and the best secondary in the country go eat. And that's not just us here at Irish Breakdown that think that. ESPN, Athlon Sports, Lindy's. Not even going to talk about Phil Steele putting Notre Dame's linebacker room behind like Michigan's or whatever the heck they did. I'm not even going to get into that, man. I'll get riled up. But yeah, I think the defensive line has the chance to unlock what that. I mean, for example, look what it did in 2018 and 2019. They had good players on the back end. But that defensive line allowed guys like a Tariq Bracy to play to his ceiling in those years. I think Alohi Gilman and Jalen Elliott were really, really good safeties for Notre Dame. I do. There's a reason why Alohi Gilman's still in the NFL. But when I look at the outlook of a Don Schuler and Brayante Johnson, you can't tell me that those ceilings are the same. So imagine what that defensive line can do. To your point, imagine what that defensive line can do for those safeties. Imagine what that defensive line can do. I love Julian Love and Troy Pride Jr. as a duo. But what could this D-line do for Leonard Moore? For DJ McKinney or Jaden Sanders or Christian Gray? And so, yeah, man, I'm with you. I'm with you completely, because I think that this D-line unlocks the true potential of this defense. But in order to do that, it kind of brings us to our second point. And we mentioned this with the offensive line too, and the same is consistent for the D-line. Can you rise up in the big moments? Can you be counted upon in those big moments? It's been inconsistent with the D-line the last couple of seasons. You know, they stepped up against Georgia in 2024. That was one of the better D-line performances, and that was the game after you lost Riley Mills. I thought the defensive line. I think Notre Dame's offensive line and Georgia's defensive line, that was kind of a stalemate in which, like, I don't think either team was like the clear-cut better unit. Notre Dame's defensive line was clearly the better unit between their D-line and Georgia's offensive line, in my view. I think they handled them very well, and that was without Riley Mills and Howard Cross on essentially one leg. I thought they played great. But then on the other side, they didn't play that great in the first half against Penn State. They did not play well against Ohio State. I don't think they played well against Miami last year. Carson Beck had way too much time. And they were inconsistent against Texas A&M. Can you be that dominant unit to unlock the potential of the linebacker room in the secondary in those big moments, Sean? That's going to be a huge question for this unit. But I think they can. They have the talent to, for sure.
It goes to, what you pointed out, which was absolutely spot on. The marrying of the rush and the coverage, and it took some time. But, in doing that, you have to ask yourself, I want to make this transition, but while we make this transition, I still need to play into the strength of our defense. And that's where my aggression needs to come from. And he wanted the aggression, which, like I said, I think we're going to see that this year. He wants the aggression to begin and be anchored with the defensive line up front. But now, you put the defensive back and the linebackers in a position to play passive. And the one thing that was impacted, which shocked all of us, was the tackling. It's like, now you got your linebackers and your defensive backs playing passive. They're thinking more than they're reacting and playing and using their speed and their talent, which they've been used to the previous 2 seasons under Al Golden. And so it was kind of like, instead of doing it slowly and still keeping some of the elements that they were used to, you just did this all-out swap. And you never thought about, like, these are our 2 biggest games. Like, maybe I need to give them a better shot. And Trev, as angry as I was, the further I get away from that game, I tip my cap to those kids, especially down in Miami. That the fact that they came back in the second half and did what they did. Did they come through at the end and stop Miami from driving down to get a field goal? No. But they did enough for the team to be in the game. And we can sit here and say, oh man, I don't like this, I don't like that. Yeah, but they do. From a coaching standpoint, I think they were put behind that. I don't think they were put in the best position to play their best. Objectively, I just don't think they were given the best plan and the best tools to be able to go up against the best two opponents they were going to face defensively. And so I think now, with the offseason and the extra year being in the system, I think this defensive line, the acquisition of the talent, the added depth, the coaching, I think, is definitely going to be improved. I think I heard you guys talk about this, in one of your post-practice shows. Just, it makes so much sense, like to be focused on getting the sack, right? But when you have somebody say, yo, I can show you how to get the sack in one less step. Instead of getting to the quarterback in 4 steps, I can show you how to get there in 2.5. Are you interested? Yeah. Yeah, I'm
Yeah, you can sign
interested.
me up for that.
Right? Not you're doing it wrong. See, it's all about the delivery, Trev. This is why I think Charlie Partridge is really good at getting buy-in, because it's about the delivery. Because you could come at that situation saying, you got the sack, but you're doing it all wrong. Or you could say, man, that's a great sack. I love what you're doing. Would you be interested in me showing you how you could do it with less effort and better technique? Are you interested in that? Heck yeah, coach. There we go. And so I think that is, Trev, you harped on it. Like, where are the counter moves? Right? Where's the better hand placement and use of hands? Where I think we start to see those things with Charlie Partridge and with the buy-in. And then, these freshmen, that's Charlie Partridge is the floor of coaching for our freshmen. So that makes you even more excited, right? Because they're getting that level of technique and focus on technique from the moment they get to Notre Dame. So, man, I'm more excited about the defensive line to watch the defensive line more than anybody else. That's the one group I'm like, yo, I can't wait to watch this defensive line. Can't wait. Can't wait. Because I'm going to be honest, man. We've had the defensive line for Lou Holtz really wasn't a get after the quarterback defensive line. That defense was really about every 11 guys playing together. But that defensive line came through in moments.
Yeah.
Like when a play needed to be made, Frank Stamms made the play. When a play needed to be made, Chris Zorge made a play. Brian Young, who was probably the more talented out of all the defensive linemen that Lou Holtz had, he made a play, right? I think this is the first, other than that, the line with Akwar and those guys, Adi, that line was a line where you felt like collectively and individually, guys could take over games. That I'm excited because I want to see if Bryce and Boubacar can close games. Okay. All right, cool. It's 4 quarters. Close Miami out. Close BYU out. The same way Bain and Messador closed the door, go do that. Go do that. Become closers in the playoffs. Close this game. Go get a sack. Back-to-back plays. Those are the types of things that you want to see from this defensive line, specifically Bryce Young and Boubacar Traore. But, man, that's my group. Man, I'm at a point, Trev, where I'm like, dude, I don't want to talk about the regular season. All right, SMU, BYU, dude, fast forward me to the playoffs. I'm ready to talk my trash. I'm ready to get it on. We know who this team is. Dude, that's just where I'm at. And it's like nothing's going to satisfy me other than a championship now. I've been spoiled by Marcus Freeman. I'm sorry. I can't speak for everybody else. I've been spoiled. I'm not going to be satisfied until that trophy comes home. Getting to the championship game, that does nothing for me. It doesn't excite me, Trev. I I need that title. I need that natty. And that's where I'm at. And I think this team and this program, I think their mindset is really, they're the ones that have to go through the weekly grind of it, you know, unlike us who can just sit back and enjoy and be entertained. But that defensive line I'm so excited to watch this defensive line play, bro, because I think the potential of them to be as dominant as we're talking about, I don't think it's been a while since we've seen a defensive line, interior and on the edges, that can get
Across
after.
the board, I
Yes.
agree. Across the
Yes.
board is the biggest piece because, like, we've seen,
Yes.
like, 2015, you had Sheldon Day on the interior. Edge play was fine with Romeo Okwara, but, like,
Yeah.
you left a little bit to be desired, at the
Yeah.
edge play in 2018. You had Dalen Hayes and Julian Okwara and
Mm-hmm.
Khalid Kareem and Ade Ogundeji. But then, like, on the interior, it was just kind of like if Jerry Tillery showed up that week.
Yep. Yep.
I'm with you across the board. Like, I mean, with the Riley Mills, Howard Cross D lines, it's like, okay, in 23, it was either one of Riley Mills or Howard Cross goes off. But then you kind of just had one guy at the end, and that was
Yeah.
Javonte Jean Baptiste. And then in
Yeah.
2024, it was kind of like Boubacar could have been that guy, but then he got hurt.
Yep.
Jordan Patello, up until he got hurt that year,
Was playing
kind of
great.
started to look like that guy,
Man.
and then he got hurt.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, what can you get from Junior Tuihalamaka? What level does Josh Burnham rise up to? What can you truly expect about Bryce Young as a true freshman? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But this year I'm in full agreement. This is across the board, and it's not just the starting lineup, which I think sets it over the top.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just Boubacar and Bryce and Jason Onye and Armel Mukum.
Yeah.
It's then you get into Keon Keeley and Rodney Dunham and Tion Gray and Francis Brew. And I mean, that's going to be huge for them. Now, there's things that they're going to have to do on the field to live up to that standard, as we all know. One of them is something that we've been talking about a lot so far in this segment. It's a more consistent pass rush in every sense of the meaning, in the big moments, in critical down and distance situations. That's something that they're going to have to do. Partridge is, hopefully, from the things that we've seen, are adding tools to their tool belt. What does that mean? Counter moves. It's having an answer if the offensive tackles or the offensive guards of the center is able to stalemate you after the first move. That's been an issue. Like, one of the things that I appreciate the most, and I'm going to go off on a tangent here, so I apologize. But one of the things that I appreciate the most about this defensive coaching staff, this new staff, is I'm transcribing all these interviews and I'm listening to all these interviews and all these press conferences. Very rarely do they talk about the talent of these players. They talk about their mentality and their football IQ. I think that is so important because, one, I think it sets the standard of, we're Notre Dame. Of course, we have the best athletes in the country. We're Notre Dame. Yeah, like, of course we have Bryce Young and Boubacar Traore and Rodney Dunham and Ebenezer Utade and Elijah Golden. And yeah, that's what we do. That's one piece that I appreciate. But then that also gives them the point where it's like, hey, we can teach them more advanced things because these are such smart football players. And I think that's what Charlie Partridge has been able to do with this defensive line is like, hey, like he's mentioned it multiple times. He's like, guys, we're at Notre Dame. Of course they understand this stuff. It's Notre Dame. Like, and then you add in the talent to boot. That's something that I appreciate. I think that's why they've done such a great job on the recruiting trail in the last couple of seasons, because they're evaluating their understanding of the game, not just can you jump really high, run really fast, and have super long arms and are super tall. I think that's something that they've really been able to do. And from the stories that I've heard from, people in the chat, you and Brian and Vince, that's what Lou Holtz was able to do very, very well, is he was able to get those top level recruits because they understood the game of football and say, hey, this is how you fit into this system. You don't just fit into this system because you're 6'5", 235 pounds and run a 4.6 40. It's because you understand what we're trying to do. And I think that's what Charlie Partridge is going to be able to do, is add more tools to their tool belt. Like with Bryce Young, from the small sample sizes that we've gotten to see, He's been very intentional about his hand placement. He's been very intentional about the depth that you're getting to at the quarterback. What I mean by that is there's a lot of defensive ends that you'll see will just run by the quarterback. They'll beat the offensive tackle, but then the tackle's just able to ride them out past the quarterback, give them the opportunity to step up. What you're able to do is if you shallow out and you get pressure to the depth of the quarterback, it gives them less room to step up, navigate the pocket, all of those things. Charlie Partridge is teaching them great things around that piece. More counter moves of like, hey, if you get a half a step too deep, then here's how you're able to counter and get back inside. Those little things are the difference between just getting a pressure and finishing with a sack. We talk all the time about Bryce Young needs to do a better job finishing. He had 29 pressures last year, 2 shy of Boubacar on 92 less pass rushing snaps. He did that on pure God-given ability because he's 6'6", 260 pounds, wicked, twitchy, and very, very, very long. Now think about what his efficiency rate is going to be now that he has counter moves. Now that he's able to, okay, well, this tackle beat me on my first initial move. He stalemated me, so now what do I do? You know what I mean? Like that's where I'm at, Sean. If they're able to do that and get more of a consistent pass rush, this defensive line is going to be exceptionally hard to stop. Exceptionally.
I think from the pass pressure, when you said that stat, and it's so funny because it's frustrating. You know why it's frustrating when you hear that stat? I'm like, dude, I want the sack. And we've heard Marcus Freeman said it's not always about sack. I'm like, man, tell that to CJ Carr against Miami the last series. No.
You know, CJ heard that. He was like, oh, really?
Exactly.
Okay.
Like, no, because if he had just been pressured, it's a good chance they might have won the game. But no, that's the frustrating part of hearing that. But it talks about that they have been successful, as a unit, the last couple of years, even stopping the run. Last year held teams per game under 100 yards for the first time in a long time at Notre Dame, right? They progressed in that facet of the game each and every year. And I think they're going to continue to do that. So if you take away games against like Navy where, they run the ball all the time, right? So it's kind of an outlier. And you go against the other teams, I think they're right around 82, 83 yards per game or something like that, which is absolutely incredible. Especially, they were so passive against Miami, they just allowed them to come out and dictate, via the run and play action, which was frustrating. So, yeah, everything you talked about with what Charlie Partridge is adding and how it's going to impact Bryce Young, Boubacar, everybody else on that defensive line. I'm telling you, Trev, I'm super excited, right? And it was so funny. I heard somebody posted that I guess one of the Wisconsin websites, one of their guys said, I really think Wisconsin has a shot. I'm like, at what? Wisconsin has a shot at what? Yeah, the guy was like, I think Wisconsin has a shot to beat Notre Dame. I'm like, what?
I mean,
I'm like, what? Is CJ Carr not making it to Lambeau?
I have a shot of winning the Powerball in that if I buy a ticket, my chances aren't 0.
Exactly.
Like every time we walk up to the tee box, we have the opportunity to get a hole in one.
I have to send you the clip. He was dead serious. Oh, he was dead serious. I was like, oh, okay. If you say so. All right. You go ahead. Hey, you know what? Play to your fan base. Absolutely. Play to your fan base. Get the clicks. Do all of that. Unfortunately, probably around 8:30 or 8 o'clock p.m. Central Time on that Sunday evening, I don't think the prospects, I don't think you'll be feeling the same way.
No, that clip might be coming down around that time, Sean. It might be coming down. It might be taken off the YouTube page. It's like, hey, I don't know what that was. That was AI, man. It's everywhere. We don't know what that's about. No, I'm look, You mentioned that you're excited to see this D line play. I'm excited to see all of it, man. We're
Yeah.
just at that point in the offseason. Look, Brian and I were talking about the schedule that Notre Dame played in like 1903. They were playing like American Medical and they're playing like fire departments and stuff. I watch a game that right now. That's where I'm at. This D line is going to be exceptionally important to their title hopes this year. The final piece is going to be maintaining where you're at in the run game. Too many times, and maybe this is just me, Sean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes year over year, especially under the previous regime, we would talk about where Notre Dame needed to step up in certain areas. It's like, hey, they need to be better getting after the passer this year. And they would do that. But then the run defense would take a step back. Or it's like, hey, they need to get better pushing the ball down the field. And they would get better at doing that. But then the run game would take a step back. Or the short to intermediate throws would take a step back. The reason why I put this in here, Sean, is because, yes, they need to get better at getting after the passer, but that can't be the sacrifice from the core of your defense of stopping the run. They now have the personnel to be very, very, very deep against the run. Very deep. They're not in a position anymore where you have to ask a 6'1", 270-pound defensive tackle to two-gap all day against Anez Cooper, who's 6'6", 340. It's like, oh, okay, you have a 6'5", 330-pound guard. Well, we have a 6'5", 330-pound D-tackle. Your small guy is Francis Brew, who's probably the strongest player on the team. It's just a different outlook. So the final piece for me, Sean, with this defensive line is you have to remain stout in the run game. I'm not somebody that's going to get too wrapped up in they have to be the number one overall team in the country in run defense and yards allowed per game because, like, the caveat is you play Navy. Not a lot of other Power 4 team. Actually, I don't know if any other Power 4 team has to go against a triple option team this year in Navy. Look, Navy could rush for 200 yards, and that might be 135 yards lower than their season total. But on the stat sheet, it's going to say that there was one game where you allowed 200 rushing yards. It's always going to go against Notre Dame. That's why I don't get too hung up on you have to be number one in the country. Now, look, if they end number one in the country, one, you will not hear any complaints from me. And two, that will go to show you how dominant this rush defense is because you do have to play Navy every single year. But that's the final piece for me, Sean. You got to be able to be stout against the run. And if you're able to maintain that and that philosophy and that identity, this defensive line is going to be just a monster unit to go against this year. Truly believe that.
What do you think is going to be the biggest thing to solidify them? Because I think we have seen Notre Dame for so long. The fact that they have become better against the run year by year without having that dominant interior guy or that big guy that can plug the middle and demand a double team consistently. You tip your cap to the players, you tip your cap to Al Washington.
Sure.
To the work they put in and what they were able to do. But I think it goes back to my original point. Like, all right, you're doing this with like effort, guts, and now you literally have more physical ability to be able to really dominate and force your will on offensive lines. And you would expect that they can only get better because of that, right? And Francis Brew is a smaller type guy, but I mean, the dude is like, ew, he might be the strongest dude at that size, right? So, and your guy, I am excited to see Armel.
Man.
I know that's been your guy. You've been latched on to Armel for about 2 years now.
Sure, I've been excited to see Armel since birth at this point. Like, hey, look, man. No, in all seriousness, I'm very excited to see what he can do this year. But what was your question? Like, apologies.
No, just what do you think is going to be more impactful? The coaching or the infusion of talent on the interior?
I might even take this a different direction. I honestly might even say the makeup of the personnel. Not even just because, like, look, I think Notre Dame has had talented defensive tackles before in the past. I mean, and when I mean in the past, I don't mean like when Derek Landry was at Notre Dame in 2006 or when Trevor Laws was there in '07. And like when I mean in the past, I mean in recent. I mean, look, Riley Mills was, I mean, he would have been a significantly higher NFL draft pick if he didn't have that knee injury at the end of 2024. Howard Cross, when he wanted to be, was a very good defensive tackle. You know, I think of guys that have come through the program before. They were all productive. Myron Tungavailoa-Amosa was a good defensive tackle for Notre Dame. Kurt Heinisch, Donovan Heinisch. So I don't necessarily say the talent. I just think that the makeup of the talent, I think, is going to be the difference maker. Because let's say talent is a wash. You've had talented guys every year, but now your talented guys aren't 6'2", 280. Your talented guys are 6'5", 295. Your talented guys aren't 6'1", 275. They're 6'5", 330. I mean, Elijah Golden is somebody that we haven't really talked about today. All it takes is one light bulb switch for go on for him, and then you add another 6'3", 6'4", 290-pound kid.
Isn't that amazing how he just kind of fades into the background when you really start talking about the defensive line? It's like, oh man, Elijah Golden is in the room. Like, okay, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Like we're talking about, yeah, it's going to be a little whiles down the road until we see Tiki Hola, a 6'3", 315-pound plugger. Like, yeah, it's going to be a couple years because of the presence of all of these guys. We haven't mentioned Sean Sevillano, Davian Dixon. Cole Mullins has had a heck of a fall camp. I mean, we're talking about these guys. Like, look, and we're only talking about what I perceive to be the solidified 5 guys that I know, barring injury, are going to be in the rotation. And we just listed off, what, 5, 6 more guys that could also be a part of it. I mean, they announced Christopher Burgess getting injured. If he comes back healthy at some point this year, he could be number 6, 7, 8 in this rotation. You know,
So that makes the combinations very interesting, depending upon situational football, down the distance. Of course, those things will play themselves out as the season goes on, even coming out of fall camp. But you know, when they're in the third 7, like what's the 4 across the front for the best pass rush? You know, do you allow Keon to go inside in one of those situations and rush the pass like that? Phew. And Cole Mullins is one of those pieces too that can play inside and outside in those situations, depending upon what you're asking from your front. So, yeah. Get me more excited, why don't you, Trev? Thank you.
Look, we are 18 days away from kickoff. I don't know if there's much more excitement that I can have. I'm quickly approaching the point where it's like I'm a big, if you're going to talk about it, be about it kind of person. And I've talked about this team for 264 days straight about what they could be this year. And now we're 18 days away from actually seeing it come to fruition. And I know it's just Wisconsin, but like I said before, Sean, I'm going to be excited to see them play no matter who it is, because all of it's going to be the journey to winning a national title, something I haven't seen in my lifetime. But now they're favored to do it on FanDuel. I'm beyond excited to see all of it. But to answer your question, I do think it's the makeup of the personnel, the defensive tackle room, combined with the level of coaching that they're receiving from Charlie Partridge, that I think is going to be a difference maker. But this unit has the potential to go, shoot into their 3 deep and continue overwhelming players. Truthfully, and that's where they're at. That's what I want to see this year, is a defensive line that is overwhelming, that has answers for anything that the opposing offense wants to do. Answers for all of it. It's like, all right, inside zone's not working. Let's try outside zone. That's not working either. All right, let's try counter. That's not working either. Let's try duo. That's not working either. Let's try gap. That's not working either. So those are all the pieces that I really want to see from this defensive line, because if they do it, man, this is going to be just an exceptional year. Let me ask you this while we wrap up the defensive line segment. Mm-hmm. What do you think? And because I know you're kind of in that full playoff mode, get me to the postseason, let's see it. But what are going to be the telltale signs for you? Because we're going to have to look a little bit deeper, especially early on in the season. What are going to be the signs for you that tells us that the D-line is living up to their potential in the regular season?
I want them to turn me into Black Rob. I want to watch them and say, "Whoa, whoa,
Yeah.
just whoa." That's what I'm
Mm.
waiting for. I'm waiting for Bryce Young to make these. Whoa, there it is. Whoa, whoa, ooh, there. Whoa, Tion Gray. Whoa, big guy. Whoa, I want that man. I want them to wow me, make me say, "Whoa," because I've seen the consistent. I've seen the good. I've seen the progression, right? To make you say, shake your head. But I've yet to have a Notre Dame defensive line make me say, "Oh, okay, all right." And that goes to that dominance, man. Like you're just blowing teams off the ball. You're just collapsing the pocket just consistently. You just coming at teams in waves. That's, I think, for a lot of Notre Dame fans, that's exactly what we're waiting for, man. We're waiting to see that on a consistent basis because we haven't. Somebody strangely asked me, uh, as great as Notre Dame is doing in recruiting, what happens when they win the championship? I said, you finally get a Jeremiah Smith wide receiver at Notre Dame. I said, that's the type of thing that is next that has not happened. And I think we're in the midst of watching things we haven't seen. Or we haven't seen a quarterback like CJ Carr in back-to-back seasons do what he's about to do. We haven't seen a defensive line in Notre Dame be this dominant across the board with depth. That's just where we are. Like you said, being in that mode, man. I want in the regular season, I want that mode of that I have to be confirmed. Like, okay, like, yep, they're ready. Like, I'm not saying come out and have the Badgers like playing their third string quarterback because the first two got
Sure.
roughed up. But I mean, I wouldn't be mad if that happened. I wouldn't be, and mad if they turned into the 85 Bears up front, and just start knocking quarterbacks out. That, for me, that would definitely be like, whoa, what? This is not Notre Dame. It's not the Notre Dame I know as far as, consistently just bringing that pressure and coming in waves. But that, for me, that's it. Just bringing us to the post game show. Like, yo, did you see what Francis did today?
Mm.
Did you see? Did you see that play Bryce made in the third quarter? Like that was absolutely ridiculous. Yo, did you see the freshmen when they got in? Like they're going to be bonkers when it's their turn. Like that's for me. That's what I want to see.
For me, it'll kind of be like what my progression was watching the 2023 secondary. Of like in the preseason, we knew what it could be because Ben Morrison came back, Cam Hart came back, Xavier Watts was now on his own. But then over the course of the regular season, I found myself sitting there just being like, hey, we're going to be cool. This second, who's throwing on the secondary? Is it like that's, I want to have that type of progression over the course of the regular season with the D line. Like I want a lot of things that I perceive to be true be confirmed early on in the regular season, and then by the time they're on the road against North Carolina, home against Stanford, going out to Provo, it's like they'll be cool. Like I know that LJ Martin and Bear Bachmeyer make up a good running back quarterback duo with their legs, make up a strong backfield. I'm not concerned
Mm-hmm.
about it because I just watched Notre Dame's defensive line eat the last 7 weeks. That's where I want to be at. I'm with you there. Of
Yeah,
like that wow factor that kind of slowly transitions into the expectation
yeah,
of like I'm no longer shocked when they dominate a team up front to where it's like, well, that's just what you should do because of what I've watched before. I'm with you completely, bro.
yeah.
With you. Sean, to take us home and the rest of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We have a daily mailbag to get us there. Now, if this happens to be your first mailbag, we have new listeners every single day. You can submit a question about the topics that we discussed today. So we talked about what CJ Carr has to do to play to a championship level, what the offensive line has to do, and what the defensive line has to do. And ask any questions about those. To get your question answered, you put MB for mailbag, or you put a mailbox emoji. It lets us know to set your question aside. And then, like always, super chats get bumped up to the top. I'm going to work through, get everybody at least once, and then scroll all the way back up to the top and then start going from there. So, Sean, first guy kicking us off today, we have Michael Kostrub. Getting us started off with a birthday celebration. Says, a big happy birthday to the one who made me a Notre Dame fan and also resides on the board, my dad, Bill. A happy birthday to Bill. Michael, appreciate you putting in that shout out as well. That's fantastic. Got one in here from Aiden Benami, and I was kind of waiting for this one to come through because I was having some fun talking some mess about Indiana fans yesterday. Two-parter from Aiden. He said, Trev made a comment yesterday that hurt my heart. He said something along the lines of he doesn't understand how people can root for Notre Dame football and IU in basketball. He said, well, one whole side of the family is from South Bend, couldn't get into ND nor afford it. Tell me what I'm supposed to do. There's a few of us that stayed loyal to Notre Dame and refused to flip. Notre Dame for life. So, here's the thing. I get where you're coming from. So where I grew up, I saw a lot of people that were Notre Dame football fans because Notre Dame football was better than IU basketball. And a lot of people who were Notre Dame football fans were IU basketball fans because IU basketball was better than Notre Dame football. For me, I'm not the biggest fan of that. Just in general, of like liking one college team in this sport, but liking them in another sport because they were better in that sport. That's something that I've just never been in line with. But that's just me. I mean, Brian is a Notre Dame football fan and a Michigan basketball fan. That's him, though. Like he grew up watching the Fab Five. I would get it. There's a chance that if I grew up watching the Fab Five, that I might like them too. I have no idea. But for me, that's where it gets a little bit tricky. But we're having some fun yesterday, and I know you're kind of just poking fun here in the chat too. But that's what's tough for me. And it sounds like you also went to Indiana. A lot of the people that I grew up around also didn't go to IU. Like they were just Notre Dame football fans because that was the good team to root for, and they like to root for good teams. And then they would also root for IU basketball, and then they'd go to Ball State and talk to me about I'm a Notre Dame football fan and an IU basketball fan. Like that's the stuff that bothered me. So apologies for not clarifying, but that's
they have a good media program. Shout out to Ball State.
Shout out to Ball State. But that's what would frustrate me. I'd meet people down at UIndy, the school that I went to, and I'm a Notre Dame football fan and an IU basketball fan. It's like, okay, sounds good. But that's where I'm at with that one. I did. All right, here we go. Back to football questions here, Sean. From Fighting Irish Warrior, CJ Carr almost exclusively did shotgun last year. Do we anticipate that to be the same this year, or more of a mix of under center versus shotgun? Sean, what do you think?
I don't think the offense is going to be that much different than last year, other than the confidence of CJ Carr and being the guy at the helm. I really don't. I think there's still going to be an offense. I think Mike Denbrock said it this spring. He said it this fall. We're going to run the ball. We're going to run the ball. That's what he's telling recruits, running back recruits. Like, dude, we're getting better quarterbacks, we're getting wide receivers, but don't get it twisted. We run the ball here in Notre Dame. And so I think that's going to continue. So the splits might look a little bit different than last year, but I don't think it will be so stark that it'll be a departure from last year. How you see it, Trev? Situationally, maybe certain things, maybe they found something short yardage that takes them under center a little bit more than they were last year.
I don't think that they're going to jerk the wheel a little bit too much. I mean, Mike Denbrock has consistently been a shotgun-oriented offensive coordinator. He was that way in 2014 and 2015 when he was with Notre Dame. He was that way when he was at Cincinnati. He was that way when he was at LSU. But I do also think that CJ Carr is a quarterback that's able to handle different looks from under center. I don't want to give anything away because I don't know what we are allowed or not allowed to talk about, but I just have to imagine that Mike Denbrock is going to do whatever he has to do to put this offense into favorable matchups. And now he has a quarterback that's able to go under center. Not a shot at Jaden Daniels, not a shot at Desmond Ritter, not a shot at Deshaun Kaiser or Malik or Everett, or it's nothing like that. I just think that CJ Carr's skill set is that of a quarterback that can have success under center. But if I had to guess, I would say almost exclusively shotgun. The only thing that I hope changes from last year to this year is we just get rid of the Wildcat silliness. I don't want to see a whole lot of that in 2026. Now, Mike Denbrock's the offensive coordinator. There's a reason why I believe he's one of the best in the game. So if that's what one of the best in the game thinks that Notre Dame's offense should do, then who am I to disagree with it? But I am not a fan of Wildcat, especially not this year where it's like last year I understood it. Jeremiah Love is your best player on the team. Do anything you can to get the ball into his hands. This year, I think the best offensive player on your team is going to be wearing number 13. I think the ball should start in his hands every single play, unless it's some crazy trick play, whatever. That's where I'm at fighting Irish Warrior. I could see them doing some under center stuff, but if I had to guess, I think it's going to be exclusively, most of the time, shotgun. From Wayne Miller, what does the wide receiver stats and play need to look like to move from potential to actual, so potential to production? How many consecutive weeks does it need to be at that level?
Okay, Trev. So if I gave you, let's go to the two teams that played in the national championship game.
Okay.
Would you want your wide receiver room, Notre Dame's wide receiver room, to look more like the Indiana production in the wide receiver room or the Miami production in the wide receiver room, where you have guys that range from 50 to 30 receptions, 4 to 5 guys? Maybe one guy gets to 800 yards, another guy 650, 550, 500. And then Miami, where you just have this dominant guy that can just take over games at 1,200. And then you have other guys around the 500, 400 yard range. There's two totally different, both productive, but just the makeup of it. When I look at this, I was like, okay, how is that going to look? What is the vision for? I would venture to say probably it would look more like the Indiana room because Jordan Faison progresses. So maybe Jordan Faison jumps to like 850, 900 this year. Maybe Mylan Graham can be that 650 to 700 guy. Micah Gilbert's going to be in the mix for maybe 650, 700, 30, 40 receptions. So,
if I had to choose between the two, I would want the receiver room that has more distributed production. Because I think that there are ways that you can game plan people out of. I mean, I think back to, Notre Dame's room in 2019 was they had that one dominant force in Chase Claypool.
Mm-hmm.
And then outside of that, it's like Chris Fink was a good player. Javon McKinley was good in some moments, one when he was healthy, and two against some lesser. I still remember Javon McKinley ate up New Mexico State whenever he played him. But then it's like, what were you against Georgia in 2019? Yeah, so you have that conversation.
Yeah.
But I would much rather it be dispersed. How I see them playing out is very similar to what Texas Tech's wide receiver room did last year. Texas Tech, their leading receiver, Caleb Douglas, had 54 catches, 846 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Reggie Virgil had 57 receptions, 705 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Coy Eakin had 48 receptions, 637 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Terrence Carter at tight end had 55 catches, 624 yards, 5 touchdowns. Jacoby Williams at running back had 35 receptions, 388 yards, 2 touchdowns. So I see it being more that than just one. And I would also prefer it to look like that because I think that you're able to game plan around just the premier guy. Let's use Ohio State in 2024 as an example. Their semifinal game against Texas in the Cotton Bowl. What made that receiving core so dangerous was everybody's like, well, they had Jeremiah Smith. Well, sure. They had the best receiver in college football, still do. Texas held him for what, 1 catch for 4 yards? But then what else happened? Carnell Tate had like 7 catches for 87 yards. or that might have been a Mecca. But either one of those guys, either a Mecca or Carnell Tate, went off. Travian Henderson had like one catch for 75 yards that was housed at the end of the first half. Now, I'm sure Archer's in the chat. I'm sure he knows those stat lines by heart by now from that championship season. Rightfully so. I'd be the same way. But you have to be able to have a counter if they try to take away your most versatile weapon. In yesterday's show, we talked about, hey, I think Jaden Greathouse is going to have a heck of a season. I think Jordan Faison could do this. They need somebody else to step up. And truthfully, I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Cooper Flanagan, James Flanagan, Ian Bremer, Mylan Graham, Quincy Porter, Cam Williams, Micah Gilbert, Logan Saldate. I don't care who it is. It could be Matt Jeffrey. I do not care who it is. But there has to be some sort of response for when defense is consistently in the start of the season game plan for Jaden Greathouse and Jordan Faison. So that's why I want there to be more distributed production. That's where I'm at with that one, Sean.
I think total yards, I think those two teams were very similar. I think they were around 3,200 yards. Both. It was like a slight difference between, it was like 3,200 yards. Just talking about the wide receivers, their production. So I think Notre Dame can get there. 3,000 yards from the wide receivers as a group.
Yeah.
That's not too
Especially
tall of a
over the
task.
course of a 15,
Yeah.
16
game
season.
season. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. From Irish for Life 99, what do you need to see from CJ Carr at Lambeau that tells you he's gone from having a learner's permit to owning the offense?
I actually saw that in the second half of the year, which is why I was high on him if they got to the playoffs, that we're going to see the best of CJ Carr. Just mastery of the offense. Getting the plays in, getting to the line early with plenty of time on the clock, getting them into the right plays, and executing. Going through his progression smoothly and executing the throws and improvement on down the field throws and hitting the opportunities for big plays that are put before him. I mean, it's real simple. I don't need to see anything spectacular because he's not about to be Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson running around, breaking big runs. No, he's from the pocket. That's who he is. So everything is very much about efficiency, control, mastery, his mind pre-snap and what he sees post-snap and how he's able to dissect defenses. So it's very much normal football operation, but you just want to at the quarterback position, but you just want to see it at a high level.
In short, I want to see what the coaches and other players have said this offseason come to fruition. He consistently puts the offense in a position to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. And those are things that we can go back through and dive into in film of like, hey, I think this was the original play here. CJ checked to this and put them in a more favorable position. It's doing the things that we talked about. And look, there's a chance that, Sean, we might not see it all at Lambeau Field. Like, there's a world where that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame comes out the gate and rushes for 150 yards in the first half. I don't know if there's going to be something that we see from CJ Carr that lets us know it's like, yeah, he's going to go win the Heisman. Yeah, he's going to be the guy. And Irish for life, I'm not saying that you're saying that at all. But there is a world where, I wouldn't have predicted that if Notre Dame beats Syracuse 70-7, CJ Carr doesn't touch the field until they score 21 points. So there's a lot of moving factors in this. But in short, Irish for life, what I would say is we just see him in full command of the offense. He's putting them in the right position. He's making the right move. He's making the right choices as far as, going through his read progression. He's checking them into a more favorable matchup, whether that be in the run game or he's, identifying. He's more comfortable in the pocket. That's something that I completely spaced talking about and what CJ Carr needs to do. More ability to navigate the pocket. More, so those would be the things that I would say. But I agree with you, Sean. There's going to be signs, but we'll see what those end up being at Lambeau. There's a chance we might not see it until night game against Michigan State. But there will be signs.
Yeah.
From Irish English, has covering Notre Dame made you more or less of a fan, and how has your fandom changed?
You can take that one, Trev.
Uh, man, I can say this confidently. It has not made me less of a fan. Uh, the thing is, one of the reasons why I love doing this job, and one of the reasons why I appreciate Brian so much giving me this opportunity to do this, is how I talk to you guys about Notre Dame, how I watch Notre Dame, how I dissect what Notre Dame does is not really that different before or after I started with Irish Breakdown. Like now it's just I talk to you all about it and not my wife. Like that's kind of the difference. Is now Brian has allowed me to be a part of the platform that he's created to talk about this. But as far as me being a fan, no, I've always been a seek to understand person. And so when Notre Dame would lose, yeah, there was a little bit of me that fan in me that just wanted to be kind of just pissed off about it. But I would always go back through, and the next day I would watch the game before NFL started on at 1 p.m. How happy has it made my wife? Yeah, pretty happy. Yeah, pretty happy, Salty. Um, as far as she's concerned, she doesn't have to listen to what I perceive the game plan to be. But it's a good question, Irish English, about just sometimes it's a little bit different when you peek behind the curtain and see how the sausage is made. And but for me, it's I always understood like how to varying degrees how a program operated and what the game plan going in was. And for me, I was never just flat out mad that they lost the game. I'm mad because I had an idea of what the game plan against this certain opponent was supposed to be, and I know that it wasn't executed that way. Now it's just kind of a little bit more heightened because now I get the all 22. Now it's a little bit more heightened because I'm able to be at practice. But I've always watched football this way. And now it's just I have the opportunity to talk about it here. So how has my fandom changed? When Notre Dame does lose, I can't be as animated on a show because this is a family-friendly show. Believe me, my language is significantly more colorful when I'm just a fan and Notre Dame loses, which wasn't great because like the second post-game show I ever did with you guys was the Northern Illinois loss. So it was very difficult for me. Yeah, so the day before Lauren and I got married, they beat Texas A&M in College Station. The next day we get married, and the first game we watched together as a married couple, they lost in Northern Illinois. I'm not pointing any fingers for anybody that wants to take that out of context. I'm just giving you guys what the situation was. But in all seriousness, it's been a lot of fun. It has not changed my fandom outside of it being for the better. Now it's just kind of raised this is what I think the expectation should be. And I know that this is what the expectation should be outside. But before it was like more conjecture, of like, I think this is what the game plan was. And I'm mad that they didn't live up to it. Now it's like, hey, like, I just know this is what they should be doing. That's how it's changed. So anything for you, Sean? Did it change you at all?
My fandom is my fandom. I count it an honor. It's been an honor as a lifelong Notre Dame fan to be able to have access not only to the recruits, their families, practices, camps. You never think growing up reading loose emoji as a teenager that you're going to get this opportunity to do something similar that he did. Like I remember like rushing home on Thursdays knowing that the publication was going to be in the mailbox. I couldn't wait to read up on, who they were recruiting, who they were looking at, who committed, the game plan, the breakdown, the predictions for the next game. So, yeah, I count it an honor, an absolute honor to be in this position to be able to cover Notre Dame. So I kind of separate the two. My fandom is my fandom, but then being able to cover the team and the team that you love is kind of like that's an entirely different section for me of appreciation.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I think about that quite a bit. Like if I could go back in time and talk to 22-year-old Trev and tell him what he'd be doing in 2026, I wouldn't have believed myself. But I think it's my fandom. I agree with what you're saying, like separate it, but I think it's my fandom that gives me the appreciation to do this. Like I it's this was everybody loves sports for a different reason. And for me, it was like with our family, we did not have similar interests. Like my mom had different interests from my dad, who had different interests from me, and I had different interests from like my sisters. But Notre Dame football on Saturdays was the one thing that we could all confidently do together, and that was it. Like that's why we look forward to falls, And now that I have the chance to be on this side, I mean, dude, it's insane, and something that I do not take for granted in the slightest. And I say that with the utmost sincerity. I really do. It's awesome, dude. It's nuts. It's nuts. And like little stuff like being up in the press box, like I'm the first game that I was at, like I got to meet Angelo DiCarlo and Chuck Freebo, who I watched on like News Center 16 countdown to kickoff. It's like just being there with them. It's like, this is crazy. Meeting Tim Priester, somebody that I like listened to. I mean, the first time that I talked to Brian on the phone, I didn't respond to his first two questions because I was so used to listening to him that I'm just like, I had my headphones in and I was walking around with my AirPods and Brian's talking to me and I'm just not responding to his questions because I'm just so used to listening to him, and then being able to sit in this chair. It's awesome. The level of gratitude that I approach this job with is tremendous.
And that's something else, as you point out. The people make it super dope too.
Oh yeah.
The people make it super dope. Like, well, Brian and I, like, we're 20 years in relationship, but like just knowing you for the 3 years, it's like, yo, you just meet good people, right? And their families, and just being super happy for you and L Boogie, like
Yeah.
getting ready to step into parenthood. And yo, that's it's like it's having extended family, and you can extend that to LL Nation or IB Nation or just Notre Dame fans in general. Just the love and appreciation and the connection that Notre Dame football gives us. To have concerns and to be able to have prayers and to be able to reach out on the message board and ask for prayers and things like that. It's truly special. It's truly a special fan base environment, and the people is really what makes it super dope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. Got one in here from our guy Salty. How much of Armel Mookum's rise in prominence is due to his maturation timetable, and how much of it is due to the vote of confidence from Charlie Partridge? Yeah, I'd probably say it's a good combination of both. One thing that's cool, again, kind of going back to the part of the job that's a lot of fun is, like listening to how much these kids grow up over the years. I mean, listening to opening day of fall camp press conference that Drake Bone and Don Schuler were a part of. Now, I've been listening to their press conferences since they were freshmen, and their journey of becoming like the true freshman, wide eyed early enrollee to captains of the team. You sound different. And I got to believe that that's a part of Armel Mookum's journey as well. It's like going from like the young, talented kid to, now you're one of the older guys in the room. So I think some of it is due to his maturation timetable, and some of that's just Charlie Partridge being able to get the most out of him. Not saying that Al Washington didn't, but look, we talked about this at the time. When a new coach gets hired, it's a clean slate for everybody. Every single person. Coach will come in with their preconceived notions about who they've seen on film and who they've watched on, if they recruited them in high school. But it's a little bit different when you see them on the practice field now. So I think that's a big part of Armel Mookum's development. I would say both. I'd definitely say both to that. What do you think, Sean?
It's interesting, man, because I think about, if things didn't go the way that they went, coaching staff, like, is Armel back? Does he return?
That's a good point.
Does Charlie Partridge coming in, did it open the door? Even outside of that, I think the staff still would have wanted Armel Mookum back. But I would have to think that, Charlie Partridge in conversations with him had to have some type of impact on his thought process. about the
Sure.
opportunity to come back. When it comes to players like Armel Mookum, man, all you want to do is play. Trev, look, it's real simple, man. Kids just want to play. It's real easy as fans to sit back and say, "Oh, you're scared of competition. Oh, you're being selfish." They're just kids that just want to play. They've been chasing this dream their entire life. They just want an opportunity to improve their life, to prove that they can play on the college level and give themselves an opportunity to get to the next level. That's really what it comes. That's as simplistic as I can be when it comes to young men and young ladies in athletics. And so I think the opportunity to play, um, the words that you're going to get an opportunity, you're going to get that opportunity. I'm going to give you that shot. And then for somebody to kind of follow through on that leads to, what Salty is saying, like that kind of vote of confidence. Like, yo, yeah, I'm going to give you a shot. You're going to get a shot. And you don't know how much that can mean to a kid to just honestly feel like, okay, I'm going to get my shot. I'm about to take advantage of it. Right. So it might be a little bit, and might be a little bit of both. Right. Because I
Yep.
think coming back was a very mature, for him to return to Notre Dame, to me, was a very mature decision
Absolutely.
because it wasn't the easiest decision. I think it was a very mature decision, because it's very easy to go to the highest bidder or go to a depth chart where he is automatically the best player. He could have done that, but he didn't. So I'm happy for
Agreed.
him.
Agreed completely. We got a buy sell hold in here from ND Wine and Cheese. So, buy sell hold, Notre Dame sets a new win streak record of 38 to 40 wins and doesn't lose another game maybe until the 2027-2028 national championship game, potentially breaks Oklahoma's record by going back to back.
Hmm.
I buy the enthusiasm and I hope by that this happens. And I don't want to be the Debbie Downer. But look, I want to see Notre Dame. I want to see Notre Dame get one. Now, they have a very realistic shot at breaking the program record for most consecutive wins, like for win streak. That's at like I think it's at like 20 something. I think it was set in
Yeah, that
between
was
88 and
88,
89.
89. Yeah. Yeah, I think it
Yeah.
was 23, 22, 23, something like that.
Yeah, and they're entering this season with a 10-game win streak right now. And if
Yeah.
they would have played the
Yeah.
Pop-Tarts Bowl, I know people out in Provo aren't going to like this, but their win streak would have been 11 going into this season, but they
Talk
didn't.
about it. Talk about it.
Yeah, I
Let
like
them know, Trev. Don't back down. Don't be timid with it. Don't be timid with it, Trev.
look,
No.
man,
Go
I'm
ahead. Say it with your
I,
chest.
I'm saving it for I'm saving it for October 17th, the week of. But believe me, if they would have played in the Pop Tarts Bowl, contrary to what our friends out in Provo believe, Notre Dame would be entering the season on an 11-game win streak, not a 10-game
Yeah.
win streak.
Yeah. They would have smacked the Kit Kats around.
Yeah,
It's okay to say it. See,
but
we gotta get Trev on Lucky Lefty so we can bring out the other side. We gotta bring him on Lucky Lefty so we can bring out the other side so we can go
yeah,
ahead
man,
and
get
say
me
it with
on
his
there. I'm
chest.
down for it. Yeah, I'm good for it. That'll be
Get that
fun.
barbershop talk going.
Hey, yeah, yep, that's what I'm talking about. I'm down, but I think they are going to break the win streak record this year. It's at like I think it's at 22 games, and so if they or no, it's at 23 games. So if
Yeah,
they go undefeated in the regular season and win their first playoff game, they tie it.
yeah,
That's very much in the realm of possibility this year. So as far as program record goes, yeah, I think that they could. I think they could do it. But look, I'm a hope by this because I would be one happy camper. Believe me. Believe me. Sean, I just got done talking about if they win the first game in the playoffs. So I want to get your thoughts on this one first. From Davy Baby 3000, who would you like Notre Dame to play first in the college football playoffs?
man, that's super dope because I was looking at some of the benchmarks. Of course, we don't have a lot of data points with it expanded playoff only being like 2 years. but there's just certain things. I think with Ohio State and Indiana, they both were under uh, right around 10.8 points per game given up defensively. Of course, we don't have a transfer quarterback, so we can't beat that one. But both teams had to play teams that they played in the regular season in the playoff. So it's kind of like either beat a team twice or a revenge
Sure.
game, right? For Ohio State, it was Oregon, and it was a revenge game. For Indiana, um,
It was Oregon.
it was Oregon. Yeah, it was Oregon both times. You're right. So if I had to choose a team that I think Notre Dame would have to face again to keep that streak going for national championship winners, I would say BYU. I would say they beat BYU and then get to face them in the semis. Yeah, because I just want to get rid of Miami and just, all right, we're done. I don't think SMU has a chance. Does SMU have an outside chance of winning the ACC?
Oh,
They
sure.
probably do. They probably do. They're going to be much better up front this year. Jennings is, you know what I worry about with a quarterback like Jennings? Has he leveled off?
The thing I get concerned about with Kevin Jennings is I think he gets very much in his own head at times. It took him half a regular season to get over that performance against Penn State.
Yes, yes.
So I get worried of like, if this season doesn't start the way for him that he wants it to,
Mm-hmm.
does he kind of get in his head about it a little bit? Then you
Yeah,
kind of factor in that injury he had on his, I think it was on his throwing hand, like one of his
yeah,
fingers on his throwing hand. How much of a factor does that play for him? Like
yeah,
I don't want to make it sound like he doesn't have any like intestinal fortitude, but
yeah,
he's very much he's very similar to Everett Golson in that sense
yeah,
of like, if one bad thing happens for that game, it kind of snowballs a little bit for Kevin.
yeah,
But Everett, it was kind of a clean slate afterwards. Whereas
yeah.
like for Kevin, it kind of starts to stack a little bit, and that's something that I
Right.
get worried about with him.
Matter of fact, forgive me, I misread the question. If it was up to who I would play first for the first game, give me the Hoosiers.
Mm, mm.
I want the Hoosiers. First game, Kurt Signetti. Come on, bro. We talking all. Keep that same energy. I want the same energy. Sorry, Josh Burnham. We have to do this to you. Still love you. But no, keep that same energy.
Yeah, I'd be down for
Keep
that.
the
Shoot,
same
matter of
energy.
fact, I'd go play him down in Bloomington in Memorial Stadium
Yeah,
because
we can
apparently
play. We
that's
can
now
play. We can play in Memorial Stadium 5 times. No, nobody fears Indiana football, man. Like, congratulations, congratulations. But we're gonna stop acting like nobody's even talking about. I haven't heard any big time ESPN stories. No one's talking about Indiana football, and you won the national championship. Notre Dame is the most talked about team in the all season. They didn't even go to the playoffs, but they think they run the state. Come on, man. Come on, man.
hmm
Do better. Do better. But shout out to Kurt Signetti. He's a great marketer. He's a great marketer. You have to watch. He strategically says things. He knows. He knows Notre Dame is getting the attention. And to kind of like bring some light to his program. Because like, dude, you just signed the number one receiver in the 27 class. You still didn't get any spotlight. You got like a day. It was talked about for a day, and then it faded to black. And Notre Dame came right back to the forefront. They're like, dude, come on, man. What are we talking about? So I shout out to Kurt because he was trying to get some attention, step away from the series, say, come play us twice. We already played you. You played us in the playoffs, bro. This is a regular season agreement. You played us in the playoffs. But all right, doesn't matter. I would have told people if I could take it, give them 2 home games. Take it. Take it. They need the money.
Oh,
They need the money. because they'll never have a revenue stream come through there like Notre Dame coming through there. They need the money.
Mm. Mm.
So take the series. Go smack them around.
I like that pick.
I'm in
go
my
Indiana
petty.
too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good picture. Hey, I'm in my petty era right now, Trev. You should have heard my USC rant yesterday. I was
Ooh.
yeah.
All right, I'll have to go back and listen to it then.
Yeah.
All right.
So you like the Hoosiers too, huh?
I like them.
No, I'm saying to play first.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Oh, I would never disrespect you like, oh, come on, Trev.
I was like, I like them. I was like,
the rant you just went off on with like IU basketball? No.
I was like, Sean, do I like IU? No, sir.
Nah.
But yeah, I would take them first in the playoffs.
Yeah. I wouldn't even joke with you like that.
I was about to say, we just got done talking about how we're family and IB goes way back and we're doing, man, it's a community. And then you're going to do that to me? Come on, man.
You know what I would love, though? I would love to have Notre Dame play my Illini in the first. Because it would mean my Illini got to the playoff number one. And from that point, I was like, I don't even care how badly we lose. The fact that we made the playoff, everything's up for us.
For sure.
Now, that's we'll take this. We wouldn't take the A whooping personally. I'll leave it like that. That's from Harlem Nights. Don't take this.
Yeah.
I wouldn't take it personally. I would not.
That's fair. Got one from Jay Melvin on Sports Beat last night. The guys were listening to Charlie Partridge talk about Keon's progress since coming to Notre Dame. Apparently, he was very raw coming into spring. How did Bama fumble such an elite talent?
Is it fair to say the transformation, the most impressive thing has been the transformation of his body?
Yeah.
Right? Because that's just commitment off season, a plan that they had when they brought him in to say, this is what we need you to do. That right there, kudos to that young man, Lauren Landau, S&C, getting his body transformed. I'm sure it's going to continue to be transformed moving forward. I don't know if they knew what to do with him, right? Because he came in under Saban. And I'm sure Saban and his staff had a plan. But then you go to a totally different staff, didn't recruit you, didn't have a long-term plan for you, totally different strength and conditioning group. Man, I think he just got caught in between, man. I think he just got caught in between. And I think you saw it in his body. You saw it in his play. But late last season, I thought, I even thought I was like, man, okay, Keon's finally starting to come around. And he's making plays. And I don't think he's in the best shape. So now he's in great shape. I think you saw he had great versatility. They would use him standing up in Alabama. He was dropping. He was rushing the passer. So he still has that athletic ability. So I think the fumble was the fact that Nick Saban left, in my opinion.
The coaching change definitely played a factor. I'm going to keep this one short and sweet because I've made my opinions known on him before. I think it's because Kane Womack is not a good defensive coordinator.
Well, yeah.
Nick Saban leaving played a factor, no doubt about that. But you then also had him for his sophomore and junior year. Kane Womack, looking at you because you took over in January of 2024. So you had him for multiple off seasons and still couldn't develop him and get more out of him. And I just think that's why he was mishandled.
You know how it is, Trev. Pettiness exists in coaching, bro. Especially when you're the guy coming in. And for whatever reason, like, I don't like that kid.
Yep.
He's not my type of guy. You know it exists, Trev. So I just think I don't think he was really in their plans. I think he kind of played his way into getting opportunities, but like I just don't think he was a guy that they walked in, saw the roster, watched the tape, and was like, okay, he's going to be one of our guys.
Sure.
Yeah, I just didn't get that feeling. And you're right, he's not good at his job. So
No. No. Like we're going on year 3 to talk about this is addition by subtraction and some
yeah,
locker room problems leaving. It's like, well, maybe the problem in the locker room is still there, and he's the one calling the
I
defense.
mean
Maybe
the
you had to.
feedback we got from the guys that transferred to Ohio State and how it was almost a culture shock for them, and how much work and how a practice goes at Ohio State and the physicality. It's like, dude, that's Alabama. That sounds so crazy because
Doesn't it?
we automatically think Nick Saban, Alabama physicality. That's
Who
immediately what you think.
who would have thought we'd be going into a year of college football talking about Alabama could be a good team this year if they run the ball and play disciplined defense? How weird is that?
That's crazy. That's crazy,
Like
Trev.
that in my formative college football years, it's like Alabama was the standard. Like that's who you strive to be. It's crazy to me. We did get a super chat in here from Irish for Life 99. Appreciate the super chat. He said, please tell Brian he is off my Christmas list until he renounces his Michigan basketball fandom. The words, quote, go blue should never come off of his lips. I'll say this. I have never heard him say go blue. I think he just really appreciated the Fab Five. I don't.
I really think that's what it is, Trev. Because look, one of my favorite college football teams of all time is 2005 USC. I, I would turn off from the Notre Dame game and go watch Reggie Bush and Lindell White, bro, every Saturday night. No shame. Great football team. Didn't care if it was the rival. Didn't care. Like I love the sport that much that when I see greatness, man, I'm locked in. I'm just
That's
locked in to see.
that's how I felt about the 2019 LSU offense.
Yeah, I'm locked in.
I mean, shoot,
So
after Notre Dame lost to Michigan in 2019 the way they did, I watched LSU more than I watched Notre Dame that year
yeah.
because I was like,
Now
I don't want to watch. Man,
I'm with Irish for life now. You would never hear me say go blue, or you would never hear me say I don't even know what USC says. So uh
man,
yeah, I can never say it. You know, still to this day, my wife cannot believe. Still to this day, she's like, your daughter has bought you so many USC things and you refuse to wear them. She bought you a USC golf shirt. And I'm like, yep, thank you. I'm not wearing it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
good on you. I respect that. That's the
I,
level that I need to be at.
I wish it was a golf store where I could trade it in. You know how you trade in the Jordans and the shoes?
Mm,
If I could go trade it in for like another Nike golf shirt, or I'm starting to fall in love with the Puma joints too, Trev.
okay,
The Puma, the
Puma
tech
has some
shirts are
nice golf
really,
stuff.
they do. They do. They really do.
Yeah, no, there's stuff like I won't even rep just another college team, man. Like that's very hard for me to do. Like I watched LSU 2019. I wasn't buying merch, you know,
No,
but
no.
I mean gosh, kid's going to be born here in probably a couple weeks. And we just got done having like baby showers and all that stuff. And her family's from like Ohio and Kentucky. And like somebody bought us like a Kentucky Wildcat thing. No, like a Kentucky
So
Wildcats.
did you see that as you were opening the box? Did you have to fake like a smile?
Oh, I was polite, but I didn't fake it. I was like, thanks. I was like, hey. I opened it. I was like, thanks. He won't wear it, but I appreciate the gift.
Oh, Trev. So have you made the first Notre Dame purchase?
Oh,
You made
yeah.
it? Was
Oh,
it a
yeah.
jersey? Or
It's
like
his going home outfit. I'm gonna read this next question for you.
okay.
I'm gonna read this next question for you. I'm gonna go grab it because we just washed it because we got to put it in the hospital bag. But I'm gonna read this next question for you, and then uh, I'm gonna read this next question for you. I'm gonna go grab it real quick. So this one is from Nicholas Grosh. Appreciate you. Do you think that Notre Dame's offensive and defensive coordinators make capable in-game decisions? Can you tell the specific games they did or didn't?
You know what? I'll start with game one against Miami. I think it was very responsible, the approach they took with CJ Carr early, because I thought they probably thought they were going to get a better effort defensively and they could work CJ into the game. So I actually thought I wasn't too keen on like all of the screen passes early on, but I know they wanted to get, which gave us a clue to maybe they thought they were going to have trouble protecting the passer, and they just wanted to get the ball out of CJ's hands early. So, uh, so yeah, I think they make. I thought the way they adjusted, especially going into that third quarter with CJ against Miami, and then the adjustments they made offensively when they took the field against Texas A&M, like dude, they if they clean up a few things, they probably put up 50 plus points on Texas A&M because the opportunity was there. But once again, they didn't expect. No one expected the defense to play as bad as they did the first 2 weeks. Chris Ash, on the other hand, I think as a staff, I trust Marcus Freeman eventually to make adjustments or to say, hey, we need to do this, we need to do that. Chris Ash has some proving to do as far as I'm concerned. And I don't know if we're going to, I guess we can't, you know what? I'm not going to be disingenuous like that. I think throughout the schedule, we will be able to judge in-game adjustments by Chris Ash, despite the schedule not be really picking up as far as competition until SMU. But for the most part, I will give Chris Ash credit for the adjustments they did make. I think in-game adjustments. I think they adjusted second half against Purdue.
Oh yeah,
Right, that was an in-game adjustment that I would tip my cap to Chris Ash. Um, I think they adjusted early on. They were struggling against the run against Arkansas. I think they adjusted as the game went on there. So there were some signs that Chris Ash, you know, can make in-game adjustments.
yeah.
There were some
I
signs there.
I agree. I think they're capable of it? Absolutely. I think they both are. I don't
Yeah.
think Marcus Freeman would have hired either of them if he thought that they weren't capable of doing it. Now, the specific games where they did or didn't, on top of the games that Sean already talked about, I thought Mike Denbrock did a great job of adjusting second half of NC State this past year on
Hmm.
offense. I mean, look, that
Yeah.
the run game was not working. It was not. But the athletes that Notre Dame had on the perimeter, NC State could just not hang with, and there's a reason why CJ Carr threw for 294 yards against NC State. So that's a game where I think that he did a good job of adjusting. For Chris Ash, it's more you have to look. I will admit you have to look more in between the weeds there, but there were signs. It's going to be a big question coming up, especially this year. You know, you're facing Wisconsin with a new quarterback. There might be some in-game adjustments. Rice has a new quarterback. Could be in-game adjustments. You might have to do it on the road against BYU. Might have to do it for North Carolina. So, but do I think they're capable of doing it? I do. Got a couple more super chats in here, Sean. One from Andrew Burke. Appreciate the super chat, Andrew. Given the perception of Notre Dame's soft schedule, do you think Notre Dame gets into the playoffs with one loss? If yes, do you think that might be a good thing for them?
Yeah, they get in with one loss. That means more than likely they'll beat two top 25 teams if they get in with one loss.
Yeah.
As it stands today, that's how it's going to look. So yeah, they would get in with one loss.
Yeah.
Um, and
I
one
mean,
loss would probably put them right around the 7 to 10 range, maybe a little bit lower than that, maybe 5 to 8 range, as far as where they would be.
look, Notre Dame made the playoffs in 2024 and hosted a home playoff game with one loss to Northern Illinois. And I
Mm-hmm.
can confidently say there was no Miami on that schedule.
No.
I don't know if there's going to be an SMU on that schedule. Like, based on the perception of how they're going to be in the rankings, I mean, we thought that might have been Texas A&M, and then the wheels fell off down the stretch
Yeah.
for them. Wasn't Louisville.
No.
I mean,
No.
it wasn't USC. They were what, 6-5 when Notre Dame played them, or 7-4 when Notre Dame played them.
They
Wasn't
did play a
USC.
lot of teams when of course, they played Texas A&M out the bat. Louisville was playing well. Georgia Tech was a hot team playing well. No, I'm sorry. I mixed. Did I mix up years? I think I mixed up.
Yeah, because Georgia Tech finished the year like 7-6. They were scrappy
Yeah, yeah.
that year. They gave Georgia a run for their money. The
You're
game
right.
against Notre Dame was
Yeah, that's the
close,
wrong
but
year. Yeah, you're right, Trev. Yeah, and the USC, they weren't good
yeah.
at the end of the
And
year. So
for all the talk about their soft schedule, guys, they played. And Andrew, I'm not saying this is you. I understand you're talking about the perception of it. They played 4 G5 teams in 2024. They played Northern Illinois, Miami, Ohio, Navy, and Army. Like now, I think Navy and Army, Northern Illinois, Miami of Ohio, who ended up playing, I think, for the MAC that year. Um, I think those are better teams than given credit for, but we're talking about perception here. Notre Dame is never, Navy could be undefeated and ranked in the top 25, and they will not get the respect nationally for beating a team like Navy, despite all of the reasons why we all believe that they should. But yes, Notre Dame gets into the playoffs with one loss. The question then is, are they on the road or are they hosting? Because I don't know what the rest of the playoff field looks like. And I'm willing to bet that they would be hosting. That's where I'd be. And then from Gavin Schmavin, Super Chat, appreciate you, Gavin. With teams selling the naming rights to their stadiums, Notre Dame should buy USC stadium rights so they can call it the Notre Dame Coliseum.
So, Trev, I can tell you what I said yesterday to be super petty. I was like, yo, we have the SoFi deal. I was like, so we've been everywhere pretty much with the Shamrock series, right? We've been to every state, every big time stadium. I was like, we should just be super petty, right? We're dominating recruiting. We should just get super petty and rename the Shamrock series the SoFi Shamrock series and just hold the game in SoFi right in LA and just bring all the best talent to SoFi Stadium every year in the state of California, just right in their backyard.
Mm.
And show USC how you're supposed to draw fans to college football games in Los Angeles because clearly they don't know how to do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is we're going to show you how to fill up a college football game in LA in a professional stadium. We're going to show you how to do it every year. It's the SoFi Shamrock series. And we're going to invite all the best teams to come out here to LA. And we're going to make all the best recruits. We're going to get them in here. You guys, come on in here. Right in USC's backyard. Chad's right down the street. You know, the guy that said that Marcus Freeman couldn't recruit, or he's finally happy to be with a head coach that can recruit. Remember that guy that said that? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's down the street, and we got all the top talent here watching us in LA. Just go ahead and be super petty. Just be super petty. I love it. Since we're talking
I'm here
about
for that.
USC naming rights, yeah, since we already got the naming rights, SoFi on the jersey, just go play a game at SoFi every year. Just go ahead. They sponsor us on the jersey. It makes sense. Give Kyron Williams a nice little suite.
Mm.
You know, I'm sure Matt Stafford would be on the sideline watching. Of course he would.
I'll be down for that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yep.
All righty. We got one here from Archer. Last couple here, Sean, and then we'll get out of here for today. From Archer. Will the freshman defensive ends hate punters as much as Bryce Young did? If they don't, both at least finish the season with one roughing the punter penalty. They should run extra laps in spring conditioning. Well, I'm hoping not. But no, I don't think they'll hate punters as much as.
Dude, the back-to-back roughing and then the almost on the play after. He almost does it again. I'm like, oh man, this kid. I couldn't even be mad at him, Trev. I couldn't even be mad at him. I'm like, yo, he's just so excited to be out there playing.
Yeah. Nah,
Are
I wasn't
you,
mad at him. He was juiced up. I get it. He was amped to go out and play.
from what you see, or just camp, fall camp in general? Um, and as a football player, how much of fall camp are you already conditioned for fall camp, or are you using fall camp to get in regular season conditioning? I always wanted to ask that, like for guys that actually played the game. Like, are you using camp to get to that point, or are you already like there
It's
going into camp?
it's like a different type of conditioning. So like the summer workouts that you're going through are getting it's getting your body in the physical shape to go and do football essentially 5, 6 days a week. But
Yeah.
camp is getting you into like football shape. Like it's
Mm,
getting you used to getting hit and like the intervals of like 7 seconds of intensity versus, 20 seconds off. It's the intensity of, going and battling one-on-ones, contested catches, battles in the trenches, things like that. Like, so it's a different kind of conditioning. Like summer workouts is more for let's build up your strength, let's build up your dexterity to endure camp. And then camp is kind of like getting you in that football shape
mm,
because I mean, you can go and you can go run a mile every day and be in theory good enough shape to make it through an hour and a half long practice. But then you factor in getting hit, and
yeah.
then you factor in doing it in pads, and then so it's a different kind of shape. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Makes perfect sense.
So that's
Yeah.
that's at least that's how it was for me. Now, mind you,
Makes
I was a
perfect sense.
quarterback, so
Yeah, it's
my
the difference
conditioning was
between, yeah, because we in the off season we would run the hallways and the stairs for basketball
yeah.
and baseball just to get ready. And then it's totally different than running like up and down the court, bumping up against somebody. You know what I'm
Oh
saying?
yeah. I
It's
mean, you
totally
could.
different. I totally
I
get
had
what you're
buddies in
saying.
college that were like cross country runners, but then they'd be gassed playing basketball because it's a different type. You're jumping, you're playing
Yeah.
defense, you're
Hmm.
sprinting, not just jogging at a pace. It's different for
Yeah.
sure. From Irish Dragon 23, what is the worst kind of person to watch a game with? The chatterboxes, the stoic statue, or the overreactor?
I'm going to simplify this and say my wife. Uh, just my wife, man. My wife. And man, I tell you, I love her so much. But her timing is just, she just has bad timing with her questions. She just does. It's just, and I love her, man. Man, and she knows it too. I'll give you a perfect example. Dude, my wife is like so affectionate, bro. So affectionate, but she can't read the room. Like Notre Dame will give up a touchdown, and during the commercial break, she'll be like trying to show affection, and I'm like, don't you see I'm ticked off right now? Like, don't don't rub my head right now, because I'm not going to react the way you want me to react, and then I get in trouble with you. It's like for that reason, Trev. Not really because she really doesn't. It's just her timing, man. Her timing,
Sure.
because she still views it as spending time with me rather than watching the game with me. And so when she spends time, she likes to touch. That's her thing. And she just her timing, she just does it at the wrong time, bro. And sometimes I think she's trying to make me feel better about what has just transpired. And I'm like,
Sure. Sure.
no, you're not helping. Just let me process it, and eventually, you know, things will be okay. So we don't watch. Yeah, I tell her I don't. You know, the other
Yeah.
night I'm watching the Cubs and White Sox.
Mm.
It's like 5-5 in the 10th, and she's coming down hugging me, and I'm like, not right. Now is not the time, man. This is not the time.
Oh man,
Look
that's
at the
funny.
TV. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry. So yeah, that just shows like the intensity of like when I'm into the game. But no, that's the only
No,
reason I
that's
say it, man.
that's fair. Okay.
Yeah.
I got a couple of different answers for this one because the list is kind of long for me. I'm very picky about who I watch football with.
Okay.
So, first one for me, especially now, is the non-ball knower. Like if you just sit there and rattle off things that you read on Twitter to me about football, I cannot watch a game with you because then I'm just going to want to sit there and debate with you the entire time, and then I'm going to miss something in the game. So I can't watch football with that person. I can't watch football with the how much longer is this game going on person. Like, here's what you have to understand about me, and it sounds like a large contingency of the chat, especially when Notre Dame is playing. That's what my day is. My day isn't, well, let's go and get coffee in the morning and then go to the pumpkin patch and then go out to dinner and then we can try to catch the Notre Dame game. It's like, no, you have me misunderstood. My day is the Notre Dame game, and whatever I can fit around that, I can fit around that. But that is not a facet of my day. That is the day. So that's where I'm at. My wife actually, Lauren knows ball pretty well. It's actually kind of impressive. She's a very smart person, and there are times when we watch football where she understands, like she can watch something on TV and understand what it is, and then she'll ask me about it. Very impressive. When I mean that, I don't mean like, was that a touchdown? I mean, there was a game last year, and one of the things that I've been complaining about at the time was Chris Ash giving too much of a allowing the corners to play off too much on short down and distance. So I'd watch corners line up on 3rd and 4 with a 7-yard cushion, and that made me ungodly mad. And so Lauren asked me about it. She understood it. She looked at what that was, understood what it was, and was like, "Why are they playing so far off?" So I appreciate. Now that's not every game, that's not every play. But she does a good job watching games with me because I think she understands it. The other person are just the people that want to be contrarian. I can't stand watch. I have some buddies from college that are like, they don't have a college football team. You know, they grew up in a place where it was kind of more NFL friendly than it was college friendly. So like I would have some buddies from college watch games with me that just wanted to poo-poo on Notre Dame. I can't watch sports with people like that are just kind of regurgitating what they hear from their dad or their uncle or their buddy who also doesn't like Notre Dame. So I have a laundry list, Irish Dragon, that's for sure. And then the last question of the day here, Sean, is from Swanton Bomb. What do you guys think the fan ratio will be at Lambeau? 50-50, 60-40 Notre Dame, 30-70 Wisconsin? I'm thinking it's probably going to comfortably be a Notre Dame, quote, home game. And as a friendly reminder, Notre Dame is favored in that game by 20.5 points by our friends over on FanDuel. So I don't know what the ratio is going to be. I can tell you this. If it's 30-70 Wisconsin, there's going to be about 70% of that stadium that's not having too much fun coming down the home stretch of that one.
You know what? I'm going to be generous and say 60-40, but I really have a feeling that Notre Dame fans are going to heavily congregate.
Yep.
In Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Yep.
For that game. I really do. With Chicago and the Chicago alumni being that close and other surrounding areas in the Midwest being that close.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And the whole draw of Lambeau, which, ladies and gentlemen, outside of Green Bay winning a bunch of championships, the field itself, the stadium itself, it's
Wise words spoken from a Bears fan. No, I'm just messing with you.
I'm just being honest. I give credit because I love stadiums. You know, I love stadiums. I think I went to the new Yankee Stadium recently. It's all right. I understand why Wrigley is revered the way it's revered, even as a White Sox fan. Like, I get it. Like, I get Fenway, right? And I get the lore, right? But yeah, man, it's okay. I mean, you got the that little Hall of Fame and all of the stuff surrounding it. So, man, if it's a tourist, it's a football tourist something bucket list just because it's Lambeau. I get it, and I think that's why a lot of Notre Dame fans are going to go to the game outside of just going to see Notre Dame whip up on Luke Fickell and his badge. Outside of that, you know. But yeah, as far as like, it's not SoFi. SoFi is amazing, bro. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've never been to SoFi and you've never been to Allegiant, those are two, man. You want to talk about like feeling like you're in your basement in your man cave watching a game? SoFi and Allegiant,
Okay. Add it to the bucket list.
PNC Park in Pittsburgh,
Okay.
terrible product. Great job building a stadium. Fantastic. So,
Good deal.
yep.
Good deal. I did run and grab this. Boom.
What's that? Oh, Trev, that's hot, bro.
The going home outfit, bro.
Yo, that's dope.
Yeah, man.
That's incredible.
Yep.
Trev, you gotta get his initials. You gotta get the initials.
Yep. I want to get the initials on there somewhere, maybe something like across the back.
Yeah.
But it's like a whole little onesie type of Letterman jacket sort of deal.
That's incredible, man.
Yep, I got it on.
You got to frame it and put it up in his room because he's gonna grow out of it quick.
Yep, that is the plan.
Oh, well, Trev, you're a smart man. You got vision. You got vision, Trev. You got vision.
I got my moments, but yeah, it's for anybody that has a little one. I got it on collegebaby.com. It has like literally any team on there that you could.
So that's like collegebaby.com.
Collegebaby.com. Like you can get like Appalachian State newborn apparel. Like there's literally every college team that you could think of on there. Obviously, the bigger the team, the more stuff they have. But yeah, that's where I got it. It's a bunch of cool stuff. But our friends know the Trowbridge household well. Got a lot of cool Notre Dame baby stuff. So he'll be done up for game day. So
love it.
But folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. I believe the guys are going live on tonight on IB Nation Sports Beat, 5:05 p.m. Actually, I know they are, but I believe, don't quote me on this, I think Brian might be on that show tonight. He comes on Wednesdays to talk recruiting, and I know they're talking early preview 2028 recruiting. So keep an eye out for that. But regardless, they're going live at 5:05 p.m. On your way out of this show, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends, family, anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Brian and I will be back tomorrow. We're going to be talking about the defense, what we know, what we don't know, the players that have to step up, and we're also going to be breaking down and ranking our top 10 defenses in college football. So definitely a show you're not going to want to miss. So until next time, that's Sean. I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.